Hi, Ken. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
Doing all right. So, what's your initial take so far?
Oh man, what a day, what a day, what a day. Um, this has been in the back of my mind for a long time. I'm glad to see that it's here. Uh, I like it. 433 pages is, I don't want to say exactly what I was expecting, but it was very, very well done. It explained in great detail reasonings for certain movements, the Elon compensation vote, and why they're moving to Texas. Very well put together. They put a lot of effort and planning into this, so very well done on Tesla's part.
So, what are some of the takeaways from what you've read so far?
Um, the biggest thing, I think, is the biggest thing anyway, is that under Texas they will have two classes of stock. They'll have the common stock, and then they'll have a preferred stock with 600 billion in common shares and 100 million in preferred shares. So I'm sure Elon will be getting a preferred share cut. Don't know what the percentage is yet. All that's to be determined by the board of directors.
Do you like that structure?
I do. I think it's warranted, and I think that's what should have been done at the very beginning. But Elon wasn't there in the beginning of Tesla when they originally filed in Delaware. That was done by the two other gentlemen who were running Tesla prior to Elon. So what wasn't done then is now being done now, and I think that's only right. I think that's the way it should be.
Do you think this will satisfy him?
It should. It will give him the peace of mind and security that I think he's looking for in having a say. Whether or not he's the ultimate say or not, that's going to be between him and the board to decide. But I don't think he's looking for the ultimate say. I think he's looking for a big influence, but I don't think he wants to be the end all be all of what happens with Tesla.
Yeah. And what do you think about the ratification vote?
Of the 218 compensation package, I think is the right thing
Right.
to do, without a doubt. Put it back up to the shareholders, make the full disclosure, which they were very cautious about, I think, in what they presented to the shareholders. They basically laid it all out there. There's nothing there's nothing I don't think anybody can complain about. You know the situation. This is what it was. This is what it is. And now you voted for it before. You voted for it on X. I thought it was kind of funny that they keep referring to these X votes, that X polls that Elon put out, but they do exist. They're not hiding from it, and they've sort of distanced themselves from it. So yeah, I think it's all good. Right? Everybody knows what's going on. You have no excuses now.
And you think it would satisfy the judge's concerns as well?
You know, it's it's not really up to the judge to approve it or not approve it. If a shareholder doesn't like it, the shareholder's free to bring another derivative suit. It really doesn't have anything to do with what happened in the past, other than there were some guidelines for disclosure that they followed that the judge didn't think was there in 2018 originally. They're now there now. So she doesn't have any input on it. And I think that's the right reading of the situation. And that was the right thing to do.
All right. Well, I mean, I guess so. If this passes, all is good. Sounds like.
Yes, I think it is. And I think if a shareholder doesn't like it and brings another derivative suit, I think they ultimately lose, because everything that the judge hung her hat on in 218's vote is not there now. So her arguments are by the wayside if somebody else were to contest this vote.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions for Ken? Please request a speak. Let's bring up Omar. Omar, how are you?
Hey, feeling good.
Well, Ken was just here, kind of summarize what he said. If this vote passes, then all is good. Elon is satisfied, the judge is satisfied, and all the disclosures are there. What do you think about it?
And they may not even have to pay the lawyers because they wouldn't have saved the shareholders anything. I mean, it's like I said, this is, if it gets approved, I think, pretty strong. Ultimately, the shareholders own the company. Their vote is what matters most of all. They overwhelmingly approved this compensation package the first time. I think Sawyer ran a little unofficial poll. It was pretty consistent with the previous results. So I think, you'll probably have less of an approval this time, given the situation's different. We already know that he's vested this entire comp package. So I think it'll probably be a little bit lower, but I suspect it'll probably be approved and we can finally put this behind us in June.
Can I say one quick thing?
Of course.
You're still going to owe the lawyers. This does nothing to the previous 2018 action. It doesn't stop it. It doesn't stay it. It doesn't erase it. That's going to move on. This has no effect on that.
So what do you mean? So Tesla shareholders will end up paying Elon and the lawyers?
Yes, that proceeding is still moving forward. So Tesla's response to the plaintiff's attorney's request for $5 billion is due May 1st. The plaintiff will respond June 1st. And if there's no agreement between the two, it's set for a hearing July 8th. All that continues to move forward.
Omar, what do you think about that?
I don't know. I'm not really a expert on all these little details. I just hope everything's approved and we can sort of move forward from this. It's more of a distraction than anything else. I think we not only need to ratify this plan, but give him a new compensation plan with the top tranches of that package vesting at a $4 or $5 trillion market cap with associated revenue and profitability milestones.
Any other questions, comments for either Omar or Ken? Please request to speak. Ken, how many pages did you say this?
The proxy statement's 443 pages altogether.
And you read it all 3 times, right?
I haven't read it all, but I've certainly read the what I think are the most important sections, and that was the comp page and Texas incorporation. What led to their thinking of moving from Delaware to Texas? How did they justify it? The rationalizations, I guess you could call it, and then the actual forms of incorporation, where they lay out the stock structure.
Michael, go ahead.
Thanks, Yaman. My question is for Ken. So I understand that apparently shareholders will still have to pay the lawyers. This lawyers asked for $6 billion. And that was based on a percentage of the $56 billion benefit that they accrued to shareholders. But if the shareholders approve the new compensation plan, which is the same exact compensation plan, then there's no benefit accrued. So it's a percentage of 0 according to their calculation, is it not?
No, it's not. Where did Tesla? Well, okay, let's look at this. If you're going to go with the plaintiff's argument, and they're owed $6 billion because they saved Tesla $55 billion, that was based on the option price at a given date. So now we're going back and we're saying, okay, we're going to give Elon the same compensation package. Well, how can they give him something that they already gave him? They can't. Tesla got that back in the ruling. She rescinded the deal. She put the parties back into their original positions. So yes, they are, in a sense, giving him what he already got. They're not giving him anything he didn't already have. Does that make sense?
Elon is not getting anything that he didn't already have. That's what you're saying?
Correct. So if you think of a quarter, right? Tesla has a quarter. Tesla gave Elon a quarter. Somebody said, no, Tesla shouldn't give Elon a quarter. That should go back to Tesla. The judge said yes. So Elon gave Tesla back the quarter. Now the vote is to whether or not to give that same quarter back to Elon.
So, and as a result, lawyers should get $6 billion for effectively just changing the procedure.
That's one way to look at it. Yes, they had to sue to get that money back. They won their case. Tesla got that money back.
I just find if their claim is that they saved shareholders 56 billion, but they didn't. So,
well, Elon's only getting $47 billion under the revote to the 218 because the share price dropped.
Okay. That doesn't change the fact that they didn't save shareholders any money. They gave us a headache in having to vote this again.
Yes, they created a lot of hassle, but the stock options technically went back to Tesla.
And are trying to dilute us as a result. I mean, it seems very unfair to me. And I think there should be at least an argument here to be made that the benefit that they conferred was a procedural one, not a monetary benefit. And even that's debatable because it's a headache that I have to vote on this again.
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you, but I really don't. The options went back to Tesla. We can argue over how to value the options. We can value them at the time of vesting, which would be much lower, than they were on market value. So it's how she wants to look at the value of those options, but the options did technically go back to Tesla.
Kristen, how are you?
Good. It's a lively day.
Always is in the Tesla world. How do you feel about this? Should I ask you how you're gonna vote?
I'm voting. I'm voting. Excuse me. I'm voting for. Yes, I think Tesla is made up of the shareholders, and in 2018, overwhelmingly, most of the shareholders voted for Elon to get this compensation package, and most Tesla shareholders are quite intelligent, quite savvy, and understood who the board of directors are. So the Tesla shares may be going back to Tesla, but it isn't Tesla who fought this. It's just one kind of shareholder who a bunch of lawyers got together and found and used as a tool to do this. But Tesla is the shareholders, and it is all these people who work in, and this was what was supposed to happen. So I'm happy to see it go forward, probably, and I'm happy to see that it's back up because I think it needs to be. So
Temp button, damn machines.
Question for Ken. Is there any precedent that you're familiar with to this Delaware insanity decision?
Precedence in what respect? Into
Similar.
precedence in the law that she applied in the logic? Yeah, there's plenty of precedence. It's a decades old precedence.
Could you give us an example?
Yeah, it's she followed the business fairness doctrine, which is decades old. It was first laid out. You're gonna make me go back to my notes. It's not novel. I should have
Well, while
prepared
Ken
better.
does that, that's okay. That's okay, Ken. You're doing. I mean, we are so thankful for you being in this space. Okay, you've already added, like even today, in the last 5 minutes, you've already added so much value, and there's no requirement that you need to prepare anything of that sort. But while you kind of go back to that machine, what do you have to say?
All I have to say is, why are we voting his brother back on the board? I think that's obnoxious. That's the simplest issue. No, vote no on his brother being at the back on the board. Just get independent board members. Okay, regardless of everything else, you don't need any more nepotism. This is dumb.
Omar.
I think that we should reelect Kimball to the board. It's not purely nepotism. Kimball has been there with Elon since he arrived in Silicon Valley. He started Zip2 with him. He knows his brother. He knows how to talk to his brother when he's being unreasonable. He's witnessed Tesla rise from being a small company to being an international giant. And this board has presided over incredible wealth creation from this company being, $30 billion just 5 years ago to being over $500 million today. Now, there's going to be a lot of people who make arguments that we need to replace the board and we need to fire people who are on the board. But I strongly urge everybody, even if you do think it's a little silly that Kimball's on the board, to vote to reaffirm the current board members. Replacing the current board members is basically the first step to getting rid of Elon, which is what a lot of these people want to do. We don't need the board getting in a fight with Elon. We don't need them trying to stop him from whatever he's doing. Keep the board in place. If somebody decides they want to leave, as some people have, that's fine. Kimball isn't just some idiot. He has been there since the beginning, and that's why I'm going to vote to reelect him to the board.
Okay. Right now, we have a bit of an imbalance on this topic, obviously. So I'm going to give, let's say, Machine, and then Meta, then Kristen.
All Kimball has done is sell his stock at the top. That's his contribution to this company. You don't need your brother to be on your board for you to have people who are aligned with the vision of the company, who may be aligned with the CEO. You're more than welcome to have Tesla suggest other opportunities and other people who could go to the board that you could vote for. But I'm highly against voting on people who are related to the CEO. That's too close. That's too dependent. I'm not saying these people have to be antagonistic to the CEO. They can be aligned, but they need to be more independent than someone's brother. You just don't need it. There's no need for this.
Okay. Meta, Kristen Sawyer.
I don't know if Machine is aware, but Kimball worked on the Roadster project. He also worked with Elon on Zip2. He knows how Elon operates, and you need Elon whisperers to convey messages at times. It doesn't mean he needs to jump into every single conversation, but that is what the board members are supposed to do. I think it's ridiculous to say he shouldn't be on there just because he's related. Samsung has a board with a lot of relatives on there. There are many companies where this is the case. It's not nepotism. It's an early investor who's been there a long time and earned his place.
Kristen.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Meta says. And Kimball's been here the whole time, and he's been pushing and helping, and he does more than just sell his stock, which I think, if we're going to point out, like Tesla Q keeps saying this, it's just a harping point that they're saying. Um, and to say that he's not good where he's at. Tesla's been doing well, really well, while he's been there, and he's helped a lot. So to take him out, I think is just another move for big institutional groups and other people that have other ulterior motives that would love to piece Tesla out to be what they want it to be. It's going to look like a hollowed out shell when you put a bunch of board members on there that are just for Wall Street and for institutional investors, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying Tesla can't, elect another board member in place of Kimball who wouldn't be better for the board at this point. But to say that Kimball hasn't done anything for Tesla just isn't correct. I would encourage you, Machine, to go watch Kimball's long form interview with Graham Bensinger, which I think it came out like 2 months ago. But he goes into good depth on many of the things and sacrifices that he made to help make Tesla successful. And a lot of the stories I wasn't even aware of. So it was a pretty interesting interview.
Those are all totally fair points.
Yeah, or even, the third row Tesla interview with Elon Musk that we did, and Kimball walked in. And, my impression of Kimball before that was kind of like, okay, he's Elon's brother. But he came in and he's telling us all these stories about SpaceX, about Zip2, about Tesla. He was there for all of it, right? And I think what shareholders need to understand is we're at war right now. This is an incredibly precarious time for Tesla and also an incredibly promising and exciting time. They've got a really great product lineup. They've got FSD starting to take off. This could be the hugest company in the world if they're able to execute on this vision. But there are a lot of people who want to throw Elon out, okay? A lot of frustrated shareholders, even bulls, people in the community, people who previously were fighting FUD. They now hate him and they may vote to try and throw him out. If we start replacing people on the board and, okay, now it comes up to a shareholder vote, we do not want Wall Street running this company. We do not want them doing the conventional Wall Street thing that the conventional playbook says you should do. We want Elon Musk actually running this company. And yes, his brother is likely to vote what he wants, but that's a good thing. And I think from my perspective, I don't want, and obviously shareholders should have some influence. If Elon completely loses his mind, we should be able to fire him, of course. And there are, other directors I think who would do that if it came to that situation. But for the most part, I think shareholders will maximize the value of their equity by allowing Elon to execute his vision. And it's very important that we lay the framework through voting on the compensation plan and voting on the directors to not rock the boat at this time, I think, because this could get sticky very quickly.
Well, Machine dropped off the speaker board after, um, unsurprisingly, obviously, because even in the replies, just while he was talking, in the last couple of minutes, he already got a bunch of hate messages in the replies. So it's unsurprising.
I'd just like to add that the proxy statement that Tesla put out did a real nice job on saying who the board of directors is and then giving them a paragraph of why they're there, what their role is on the board, and why Kimball should be reelected. And Kimball's argument, so to speak, is on page 23 of the proxy. So Tesla is putting out reasons why he should be reelected.
Okay, Machine.
Yeah, listen, I gotta go order some food. I'm realizing, like, I'm not disagreeing. I overstated that hasn't done anything, and I know obviously they went back with Zip 2, but I didn't know how much he contributed to, say, the Roadster, and I totally get he's a confidant for Musk. He's someone who can, relate, translate messages. Like, I get that. I'm tired of everyone bending over backwards to appease the CEO. I'm not saying you need to be contradictory to the CEO, but everyone's like, "Oh, we gotta make sure he's happy." Uh, like, grow a spine, okay? Everyone's like, "It's wartime now." Like, you're not in this war. You're just a investor, and that's fine. You want to make these decisions that you think are best for the company, and you will vote accordingly. But I just feel like don't be so weak.
Kristen.
Yeah, I do appreciate Machine comes on here and he shares his point of view, and I know he probably, I mean, I honestly don't know where Machine was during 2018. In 2019, when mass media, when Wall Street was making fun of Tesla, where they were saying it wasn't going to be anything, when EVs were a joke, and Tesla showed up on the world scene, and it is scaring the hell out of legacy auto. And I think that's something to be said. And that didn't just come around because we were just little investors that were like clueless. I think a lot of us understood the passion and the vision that was there and the mission moving forward. And a lot of us were debunking a lot of these huge, we were writing articles countering Jalopnik that were paid by legacy auditors to make Tesla look horrible. So, I mean, maybe we're just little Tesla shareholders, but the funny thing is we were the little Tesla shareholders while Wall Street didn't get it. And that's why we're here.
Okay. We're gonna go 2-1. Nick, then Machine, then Wessex Meta, then Machine, then Omar. Nick?
Yeah, Machine. I mean, you talk about like Elon, and we're all just giving in to him. And I mean, this is a guy that hasn't been paid in 6 years, and we're kind of helping fight for him because he hasn't been paid in 6 years. Um, Machine, what do you think the board has done or has not done that it should have? That's why you want to shake up the board.
Good question.
Well, first of all, I didn't say anything about his compensation plan. I think he should be paid his compensation plan. It was already agreed to, right, by
Why we're
shareholders,
fighting?
and that's fine. Vote for that. People and companies need to be compensated with stock and equity, and people argue, oh, they already own part of the company. That's not how it works. Once you're at a company for 4 years, your stock vests, and yeah, you'll get toppers after, but people lose incentive and motivation, and so it makes sense. And his plan was totally aligned with shareholders, right, in terms of increasing value. I have no problem with that. Uh, what I have a problem with is the fact that what I perceive to be things, for instance, that in the second half of 2022, when the demand for the cars was plummeting, and Tesla knew this, and they waited until January with a massive sale cut, price cut. And the reason they waited likely was so that Elon could sell his shares to buy Twitter. And the way he sold those shares was very abrupt and not in a proper manner. And those things should have been controlled for better. And everyone can argue he can do what he wants. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like, you need to have some feedback mechanisms there. And so, yeah, everyone could argue that this is overreaction and whatnot. That's just my opinion. I don't think you need Kimball to be on the board. And as for, I mean, Kristen's point of like where was I in 2018? I was all in on Tesla, or heavily in 2018, and then all in by early 2019. Also fighting FUD. Fully understand the PTSD that people have from that period of time because there was so much BS you had to fight through. But the problem is that Tesla's not in the same place as they were then. Everyone thinks now they're back in war. I mean, you're literally using the terms of war. PTSD, fighting, we're back. No, you are not exactly back to 2018. No, the media is not against you like they were in 2018. It is not exactly the same. And so I feel like people are projecting what it was like back then into now, and that you need to have the same exact situations as now. You need to have the same board. You need to have the same
All right.
support for Elon. No,
Let me-
vote no.
Do we need your brother on this board right now to hold you down, Machine? Meta, then Wessex, and then we'll give another word to Machine, and then Omar, then Kristen.
I just want to ask Nick's question again because I think Machine failed to answer. What do you want the board to do that the board did not do? It sounds like you agree with the compensation package that was presented. It sounds like you agree with a lot of the things. I don't think you should replace the board because of external perception. I think your position is that DEI is bad and the board has supported a number of those initiatives. The board has supported bold initiatives that many other companies would back away or shy away from. So I think the board has demonstrated positive features other than quote unquote supporting Elon. I'm just curious what you want to see the board do other than hold his feet to the fire, which I don't think any board could do realistically.
Well, I mean, my thing was the whole handling of how he sold the stock last in end of 2022 and the price cuts. That was totally poorly managed. That's my one comment on what they did. You could argue that's not a big deal. Fine. Coming up, what I want to make sure the board is able to do is make sure that the CEO of the company doesn't risk too much on robo taxis at the cost of the fact that if it takes longer than needed, that would be detrimental to the company. That's all. And then you could do both, right? You can go for robo taxis and be fine if it is delayed a few years. But if you go to a point where if it takes another year or two that you're in a significant cash crunch situation, then I don't want that to happen. And so as long if you think this board can do that, then fine. Or maybe you disagree with that and you're like, yeah, let's go YOLO, all our money on RoboTaxi. Then that's fine too. You'll vote accordingly.
Okay. Wessex.
Hey, I think Omar did a great job pointing out that I think a big context that's important to know is that we're really vulnerable at this moment. Omar is correct to say a lot of bulls now have kind of turned and they look at things differently. But I also want to add that a lot of people don't realize that large index funds, when you buy shares in an index fund, you do not have the opportunity to vote those shares. The people that run those funds are the ones that vote those shares. And many of them are really pissed off at Elon right now. BlackRock, I believe, is an example of that. Elon has been attacking ESG and DEI for a long time, which is really important value, or I don't know if value is the right word, but important things to the people that run those funds. The people that run those funds want to get activists on the board. They want to replace several of the board members so they can get their way, which would ultimately, I think, destroy Tesla or at least change the trajectory in such a way that I wouldn't like. And potentially, we're at risk of losing Elon, which, I don't know how much of a risk that is or is not. But with the stock at a low price right now, that really just enhances this vulnerability. So it's really important that everybody on this call understands we need your vote. Assuming you support Elon, you got to vote. You can't overlook this particular moment.
Great points. I like the fact that you're introducing new unique perspective, Wessex. That's a great point about the passive managers. Omar.
Machine said, "You are not part of this war." But we're here talking about a shareholder proposal that will be voted on by the people in this room. And this vote will decide the future of one of the most important companies of our time. If Elon's compensation package is denied, I'm not sure what his future with Tesla is going to be. it may make more sense to focus more of his efforts on XAI, on other ventures, rather than a venture where he doesn't feel he'll be able to control the outcome, that the product he creates will be controlled by Wall Street and not by the people running the company. So the future of Tesla, if this vote is not reaffirmed, is scary to me. And I think a future where, the board is, people like Kimball get cut off the board. I think a lot of people don't realize the success story of Elon Musk is really a success story of Elon and Kimball in many ways. Elon was working hard, he was coding, he was a little more, sort of on the spectrum, not always the best with people. Kimball's the guy who is good with people, who papered things over, who talked to people, who charmed people, who together they built this business empire. And there's going to be a lot of people who are frustrated. They lost money investing in Tesla maybe over the last few years. Or, they're just more skeptical. They don't like Elon's political posts. And they're going to listen to guys like Machine and say, yeah, why should his brother be on the board? Why should he get paid billions of dollars? And there's going to be people there, some of them in this room, who are going to vote no. So for the people who actually do understand that Kimball didn't do nothing, that Elon earned this compensation package that nobody thought was possible, every single yes vote is going to be important.
Machine, Meta, Kristen.
Yeah, I think people, take the analogy with people worried about gun rights, where if you say we're going to ban assault rifles, and then pro Second Amendment people are like, whoa, slippery slope. If you say you're going to ban assault rifles, they might come for the next thing next, and you can't have any in between. And my point with Kimball is simply what I've stated, my reasons against it. I'm not saying then you should vote for some activist person to be part of the board. No, I think you should be able to vote against that too. So I don't think one equates to the other.
Let's go Kristen first. Kristen, then Meta, then Yoda.
I just had a question, Meta. I know that your account is new. Do you have another account that you were here on Twitter at that point, or it's now called X, that you were helping fight the FUD? Because I don't remember seeing you.
I think you meant that question for Machine. He used to have a different account.
Yeah, Machine. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he used to have a different account. I don't want to out him.
Yeah,
because I think,
Machine has been around for a long time. He was
Yes.
also on Tesla Motors Club before that, and
yeah, we can
he's been
attest to that.
Yeah.
He's not lying when
Yeah.
he says that. Just to be clear,
the only
No,
thing.
no,
The
I'm
only
not
thing.
saying he's lying.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know what account it was.
it was
Yeah.
under his real name, and so I think we don't want to put it out there.
Right. And just as a context, he does play both sides of this stock. Sometimes he shorts, sometimes he goes long, but overall, he's very much in line. My understanding is he's very much in line with the Tesla's mission. But Machine, if you want to elaborate on that, because we get a lot of questions about your, positioning.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, right now I have nothing right now. I was a long-term bull from the simple fact that starting in 2011, I live in Bay Area. I drove past their Menlo Park facility. I was like, what is this? Electric cars? And I was very excited by the overall idea. And then I started seeing the Model S being released all over Los Altos, Mountain View. And I was really interested in the company, right? And then they're going to come out with cheaper car, 2015, and I'm like, I'm going to wait for this. And so I waited years to buy a car just so I could reserve, that first day, 2016. And then I started investing a little bit, and then over time, just following more and more. Right, you're going to invest more money, truly believe EVs are the future, all that. Study Tesla in detail, more in detail, look at all these articles from people, except for value analysts who had ridiculous articles. They're terrible. And you realize, oh, this future is EVs. This company's got high gross margins. They just need operating leverage, and there's potentially huge profits, right? So you go in and you invest long term, and that's all
I don't
paid
want to
off.
get right.
Just
Right.
summary, that happened. Now it's not about, everyone was before for the future sustainable energy future, and now people are just obsessed with robo-taxis. It's changed. The message has changed. The valuation of the company potential has changed. It's a whole different ballgame right now. That's all.
Meta, then Andrea. Sorry, Meta, Yoda, then Andrea.
Yeah, I think what's important to keep in context here, Machine, is this vote, whether you agree or disagree, it's symbolic to, do you agree with the previous comp package? I think if you remove the board members that were involved with that vote, it kind of signals that you think that the judge was right. And I think the percentage of people voting really matters in that way. And the second thing I would say is regarding the sale of Tesla stock, Elon had to pay his tax bill. So the only options you have is, how could he have made that tax bill and that payment? You could argue he could have sold a little bit less when it came to the acquisition of Twitter, but he delayed exercising his ISOs for 10 years. He paid the taxes at the very end. He held the stock as long as he could. Your other option is that he sells along the way, but then, people tend to criticize people who are like Drew or Kimball selling along the way. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation. And I don't think that we should second guess how somebody offloads a lot of stock, because dark pools have their own downsides. So it's not clear that should be the definitive reason to vote these people out.
Yoda, Andrea, Machine.
This vote is very important. Not only does it need to be the majority, it needs to be the overwhelming majority to send a message to Delaware and the judge there. I will be voting yes with my 14,200 shares for what it's worth.
Thank you, Yoda. Andrea.
Hi, Haman. Mako, thank you for hosting this. Omar, good to see you, and Meta and Kristen. Wow. So, with regards to the Delaware thing, I think the stockholders kind of threw themselves under the bus with that. With regards to the board, I thought Kimball was still on the board, and I guess I was going to ask Omar, is it an even keel vote? Because I know the downsizing had to take place. There's people out sick. There's production issues. I know, I get it. And I know those people are valued and they'll probably be back. That happened with other companies that I'm aware of, with the airlines and whatnot. But anyway, I'm just wondering about the board, how the votes are stacked. Are they voting on just the comp package, or are they voting on how to reconstruct the actual board of directors?
Okay, Machine, then Sawyer, then Omar.
Yeah, I don't have much else to say. It's not like
okay, let's look at the yield. Yeah, Sawyer.
I think the basis for some people not wanting Kimball on the Tesla board is if people don't want Elon surrounded by yes men. And Elon was walking around Giga Texas in April of 2022, and suddenly he came to the realization that he wanted to purchase Twitter. And Kimball, Elon's other family members, excluding his mom, and 4 friends were all telling him, like, why? This seems like a terrible idea. And a lot of people in his circle disagreed with him on this, but he went and did it anyways. And I think this idea that a truly independent board member would have any huge effect on how Elon behaves or goes about things, that they could somehow, quote unquote, rein him in, I just think is wrong. At the end of the day, Elon's isn't going to change for anyone, and he'll always do what he feels right and right for the company. Sometimes he's right in those choices, sometimes he's wrong. But in the end, if he feels like he can't do the things he wants to do, it probably increases the risk that Elon leaves the company.
May I address Sawyer real quick, Yaman? Or if anyone else was ahead of me, Sawyer, hi. Um, I think Elon mentioned that he only wanted like 30% or something say, and because I mean, he and Kimball did make this was their baby. Um, so I'm a little kind of confused about like how much of a say he has and if he's going to be faded out. I mean, that's pretty much impossible, right? Because I mean, how does that work? And I don't really know.
Well, right
And
now, Elon owns 12.5% of Tesla outright. And he wants to get to 25% ownership because he feels like that's a level where he would have enough control and other third parties could not come in and purchase enough Tesla stock to override his vote. And his $56 billion compensation package that was, struck down basically in this Delaware court case, that would have helped Elon get much closer to that 25%. I think around.
that was
may-
going to go right back into Tesla, so those people were dumb.
Well, yeah. I mean, so the purpose of this vote is to sort of, rectify that. But again, it doesn't get him to 25% still. So I don't know where that extra few percent will come from. Maybe a new compensation package. But again, it's still a lot of questions up in the air as to what Tesla and the board will be able to do with Elon's next compensation package. Because let's say even if this compensation package gets approved, like what's going to stop another shareholder from filing just a similar lawsuit, even if the board disclosed all these extra disclosures in the proxy statement?
That's
So
the thing. It's like, why do you care if it's going up and down when if you're not in for the long haul, when people are regretting selling, it's kind of a redundant moot point.
Omar.
I mean, the thing about shareholder litigation is it's inevitable, right? So there's always going to be tons of shareholder litigation. You can almost guarantee this new compensation package and any future compensation package, there will be a lawsuit about it. But if you change the jurisdiction to Texas, which may be a more friendly jurisdiction, potentially, may care more about shareholders' rights and may have a different sort of view on things, which they may or may not, I don't know. And you have another shareholder vote sort of reaffirming the compensation package even after the fact of knowing that it's going to fully vest, then I think you have a pretty strong case. And if that doesn't work, then there's maybe other avenues to explore.
Yeah, I agree with you, Omar. Didn't they just go back on their word though? Didn't they Boy Scouts honor handshake on that and then they sued anyway? I mean, that's not cool. And that seems like it would be some fine print there about it.
And anything to add at this point?
Even if you reincorporate in Texas, Omar's right. There's no guarantee that things are going to be any different than how Delaware ruled. And you are always going to have some sort of shareholders litigation going on. That's just a fact of life in the Fortune 500. So you're going from Delaware to Texas, and Texas doesn't have a lot of business case law developed. It's almost brand new to a degree, and they will be looking towards Delaware for a lot of persuasive arguments and how they've handled these situations in the past. So you are going to have some Delaware influence. It's moving to Texas isn't the be all end all of the shareholder litigation concerns.
Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. If we have any institutional investors in the audience, they're welcome to come up and talk to you as well. Andrea?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. I'm wondering if you need to cash out, you cash out, like your family, your mother needs surgery, whatever. But if you're not in it and you don't keep your word, then that should have some sort of, um, you know, that should have some sort of a stance in the courts. I don't get it. But I appreciate you and Omar mentioning what you did about moving the jurisdiction.
One second, Meta. William, go ahead. William, you have to unmute yourself for us to hear you.
Sorry, I was just going to ask whoever asks to remove Elon's brother, who would they put on the board? That's all.
Okay, Machine's not on the board right now, but when he comes back, we can ask him that question. Meta? Meta, you're on mute. Kristen?
Yeah, I'd like to point out, and I think some people here who've been paying attention would notice James Murdoch and both Kimball have gone against Kimball or Elon and some of the things he's done. There's been points where there's been contention, and if people have been following the company, they've seen that. So I know that he is countered. The board does its job. So I think that should be pointed out. I think Kimball's quite a fair person, and there's quite a lot of big things that Kimball and Elon don't agree on. So that should be pointed out. And
Thank
that's
you.
not with Tesla per se, that's also political issues or worldviews.
Yeah, I mean, you can see on Isaacson's book, for example, Kimball questioning the acquisition of Twitter, saying Twitter is a hair on the ass of your accomplishments or something to that extent, quite eloquently, I thought. I mean, it's his brother. He knows him well. He knows when he's doing something stupid. He knows who he is. He understands him. And he's been in business with him really since the beginning. He's watched Tesla grow since the beginning. I think he brings an enormous amount of value and experience to the board.
Omar, I'm going to direct this question at you. This is from Henry. This is not a question, actually. It's more of a statement. Henry says, the board should have never let him buy Twitter or be the CEO there. What do you say to that?
I mean, does the board have the ability to block the acquisition? Like, you hear this a lot, people saying, oh, I can't believe he sold his shares. How could the board let him do that? But we approved him getting the shares, right? So when you give someone stock-based compensation, there's only one reason why you're giving it to them. It's so they can sell it because it has value.
But that's not what the statement says. The statement is not about allowing to sell shares. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. The statement is about allowing to be the CEO in another company.
I mean, he's not the CEO of Twitter, actually, but he is the CEO of SpaceX and the Boring Company and Neuralink. I mean, I think what's kind of interesting is when you look at XAI and Grok, it's increasingly looking like that Twitter data, that background context about understanding the world is going to be an essential part of the Tesla experience, both in terms of, I think, the voice assistant, but also in terms of full self-driving, that background understanding is going to be really important. So, I mean, I think it really could end up being very, very important to Tesla and really help them sort of maintain the unit economics we expect without having to depend on OpenAI or something else to sort of gain some of these multimodal LLM capabilities. I'm not really sure the board can stop him. I mean, they can fire him, right? If they can tell him, look, you need to find another CEO or you're fired or whatever. But I mean, that's what he did. At least nominally, Linda is the CEO of the company, right? So I'm not really sure what more the board could have done.
Maybe he doesn't want to be the CEO. He just wants to own,
Andrea, this is the second
Oh,
reminder.
sorry, Yaman.
We have people on the board.
Yeah,
And
gotcha.
Ken?
It goes back to corporate governance and the corporation controlling what people can and can't do. And the only way you can say somebody can't do something is to put a restrictive covenant in their employment contract. And as far as I know, Elon doesn't have any employment contracts, so to speak. So without that restrictive covenant, Elon is like anybody else. He's free to do what he wants with his time.
Andrea, then Omar, then 10 button.
I'm good. Yield to Omar.
Omar.
In Tesla's employee contracts for any ordinary employee, you're allowed to have another job and work at another company as long as it doesn't impact you giving 110% at Tesla. So the perks that Elon enjoys, sort of having multiple companies and multiple projects, pretty much anyone at Tesla is allowed to do the same. Redwood Materials, for example, I believe was started while JB still worked at Tesla.
Temp.
Just going back to Ken, I appreciate you being in here with your expertise. Wondering if for myself and for everybody else who may have missed it, what is like the short version, kind of dumb guy version of Steel Manning Delaware's argument in that decision?
Steelman Delaware's argument. Delaware's argument was that the shareholders didn't get proper notice of the conflicts of the board of directors, that they are basically controlled by Elon. So Elon negotiated against himself, which was all Elon's doing. Whatever Elon wanted, Elon gets. And that's not what board of directors are there to do. Board of directors are there to advocate for shareholders. So they violated their fiduciary duties of loyalty, and the court said that wasn't right.
Got it. Well said. Thank you.
Adopt dogs.
Thank you. Question for Omar. The tweet yesterday against NPR or the people that work there, that got me upset because my question is this: did it get you upset? What can be done about a CEO that takes pot shots at their target market for their consumer goods company?
I didn't catch that tweet personally. I'm not a huge NPR fan. I like some of their podcasts, Planet Money, some stuff is good. But I think Elon just kind of believes you should just say whatever you want, and if some people get upset, then that's kind of up to them whether they want to get upset or not. I kind of don't really follow all of his commentary. He makes a lot of comments on a lot of things. I don't personally have any beef with NPR. I don't think, being excited about electric cars or autonomous vehicles or rockets requires you to also not like NPR if he doesn't like NPR this week. So, I don't think it really matters. With his position as the owner of X, he's just kind of going to be making comments on a lot of things and, just focus on what's relevant. And I think if you like NPR, then keep listening to NPR. That's great.
Do you
We're
think?
seeing that, Kristen.
Sorry.
I think people continue to go with this assumption that the majority of the weakening in Tesla's demand is due to Elon pissing people off, and I think it's mostly incorrect. I think the data shows that EVs in general have hit a little demand lull, and it's not about the CEO, number one. You can argue, you can talk to your ultra left wing friends, and some of them are going to be pissed at Elon. They're not going to buy Teslas, but they probably weren't going to buy Teslas before, anyways, a few years ago. And sure, that hits sales a few percentage or something, but it's not a big deal. And as for NPR, I mean, what do you expect Elon to say? This guy wants to speak the truth of what he thinks is the truth, and I applaud it, as long as it's not rude or obnoxious. And he didn't say anything rude or obnoxious about NPR. And I don't know, I'm a pretty liberal person, and I've witnessed, just like many of you, over many years, like we talked about before, the FUD against Tesla and how the media, including organizations like NPR, can vastly skew a narrative versus what the truth is. And I think that's kind of trained some people in here, at least, to then go look at these organizations and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe you're not speaking right about other issues. And I've paid attention to other issues and noticed NPR has skewed them as well. And I think that's what that journalist who I read was talking about. And frankly, he's correct.
Kristen?
No, I would second what Machine is saying. It does make sense. And as far as the NPR person, I think Elon's just pointing out like where it states like she's not pro-Constitution. And Elon as a citizen has every right to stand up and say something about an organization that's paid by our government that has weird stuff going on. And he's just pointing it out, which I think it's the rightful duty of all citizens, if you actually believe in the nation you live in, to point out where things are crumbling or undermining things. I mean, we don't stand together if some of our pillars are deciding to intentionally collapse. So I just think that's what Elon is doing. He's a passionate man who believes in what he thinks is right, and that's why Tesla is even here in the first place. So
Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I would just reference, those were all good points. I would reference the stock price of Toyota over the past year. And we're trying to sell something here. And you can do that only a few ways. One of them is by attraction, though, or there's promotion. And after that, it's, those are very pretty much the only options. So be more attractive. Try and get those 65, 75-year-olds in their Priuses into a Tesla. Don't rip the
Okay.
shit out of NPR.
William had a question for Machine earlier. William, could you repeat your question for Machine?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you replace Kimball, who would you replace him with?
Thank you. Machine?
Me. I think that's probably best for the company.
Ross Gerber.
I'm definitely better than Ross Gerber for the company. I'm not even joking.
Andrea?
Yeah, I was just DMing Omar and Kristen. I think that the quota that was met for the stockholders, for any one of them to sue, was being treacherous. I also wanted to point out, that Elon buying Twitter and what we have now, whether it makes profit or not for him or whomever, was a moot point because I don't think that that was a concern. And I think that any of us being able to speak our minds, I don't think there's a monetary value or currency equivalent to that, given the spiritual enhancement and the camaraderie that has taken place thus far since that. So,
Machine.
yeah.
Well, I just want to respond to Adopt Dogs and Tesla's question point about Toyota. Toyota is not a pure EV company. Why don't you go look at the share price of pure EV companies such as Rivian, Polestar, Lucid, and my favorite, VinFast. Go look at how those have plummeted over the last few years. Toyota is not an EV company; it's a hybrid company, and it's a successful one. It's a totally different area, and that's the area that's been targeted. And that there are demand issues overall for EVs, and people got to figure out how to push up that demand. I don't know. That's a whole other conversation, but it has nothing to do specifically just with Tesla.
Kristen, Yutzi, and Deepox.
I was just going to point out that Toyota succeeded for a long time on nepotism at some point there, so that was kind of ironic.
Yutzi?
Machine, I wanted to ask you a question. I agreed with about 90% of what you said so far, but if you vote no to Kimball and we voted for an independent board member, maybe like somebody like Machine, do you think that would really change anything anyways? Do you think Elon would say, hey, I want to go balls to the wall with autonomy, but this guy named Machine had this good idea that maybe we do something else? Do you think that would really change Elon's mind?
First, no, but I think, you need the right people, and maybe Kimball is that person who can translate him to be an effective communicator, right? And vice versa. So, for instance, and this could be Kimball. So first of all, I, kind of steel manning the argument a bit, just kind of off the cuff, right? You guys presented all great points why you believe Kimball should be part of the board. I'm not, really strongly against it. Now I would say, good job. You guys won me over. But I would say, for instance, if you're moving into robo-taxis, this is you want to talk about war. The war is going to be in convincing institutional investors that this is going to work. And right now, they have not communicated anything confidently that would convince me or other people. These institutional investors have people who specialize
Hold
in
on.
this stuff.
Do you think Elon is worried about convincing institutional investors that robotaxi will work?
Well, that's fine if he's not, and that's why there's a big risk that the share price might get devalued further first, and it could be years. You don't know, right? So you have to just, if you're fine with that as an investor, and you're not worried about employees who might depend on those stock options or their motivation and everything, then fine, just let it be highly volatile. But that is what's going to happen with robotaxis. If you don't have proper effective communication on this high risk strategy, you're going to have huge volatility.
Okay. Deepox, then Omar.
Hey, so what I'm hearing is that Kimball's trying to get on the board. Is that the correct assumption that I'm hearing?
Omar.
Well, Kimball's already on the board. So I think what were we talking about right before that?
Will you vote me on the board?
Oh yeah. I mean, they don't need to convince institutional investors. They just need to actually do it. If you can actually do it, then everyone will be convinced because they'll be able to see it. Right? So you need to actually build a Dojo data center in Texas. You need to build a Dojo data center in Buffalo. You need to build out the NVIDIA training compute. You need to design some vehicles. You need to do a bunch of things, get the software to actually work. So they need to do all those things. And they're apparently balls to the wall on trying that. Institutional investors will catch on. In the meantime, if the stock suffers a little bit because of people expecting the business to not grow, well, that actually increases employee compensation and employees end up benefiting more. And it also benefits, buyers on the retail side as well. So there's some benefits to things going bad. And I think we are starting to see some of those. It's those moments that are tough that really get people to look at things seriously, to make big leaps, to simplify things, to just focus much more on setting up what creates the next wave of growth.
Machine, there's a question in the audience for you. If we vote you to the board, will you put Popeyes at all superchargers nationwide?
That is something I would definitely take under heavy consideration. In fact, I was at Popeyes earlier today, in my break here in between talking, and they just saw me and called me out by name in Spanish. They're like, blah, 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 Joseph. So they knew my order and they know me, and the people know me because I'm an effective communicator across languages, across programming languages. I can communicate with the CEO to the public properly on these big issues, which Omar apparently thinks we shouldn't do because he actually wants the stock price to go down. That's basically what he just said. Like, don't communicate this. I only want the people who really trust Tesla to get the payoff. That's what he's saying, basically. And I'm saying, you think employees are happy when the share price goes down? I don't know if you've never met a Tesla employee, Omar. I know many Tesla employees. They're not happy when the share price goes down and stays down. So I'm looking to avoid that. And the way that's only going to happen is with a very clear, effective strategy of showing how they're going to achieve the software for autonomy.
Wow, you shut everyone up. Thanks.
Well, the more you go down, the more you go up to reach the same terminal valuation. So it ends up being more fun on the ride back up. But I think really, if you think about, sort of the equity grants they're getting, they get a 15% discount to the lowest stock price in the quarter. So if the share bottoms at 150 for one day, they're now getting an equity grant through the employee stock purchase program at that lower price. So there definitely are some benefits for the employees. It may not seem fun at the time. Your existing holdings do go down, but you might actually be able to attract a really high value programmer who sees an opportunity to create a massive appreciation in the stock and benefit a lot through equity appreciation.
Yep. Andrea, Adopt Dogs, and Machine.
Thank you, Yaman. Omar pretty much just touched on. I read all these notes down while everyone was speaking. Omar just pretty much touched on the quarterly earnings, end of the year stuff where you get a bump and on your check. It went from 280 to 180. That's only $100. I don't know why it went down, but it was clearly a huge buying capacity gap. I mean, moment, not gap, but opportunity. I wanted to ask a few things. If Kimball were on the board, which I thought he was during the Delaware thing, how would that have affected that? How solid is the board? How solid is the board? And is it legal to sue without a majority vote, like an individual, such as what just happened? Also, if Elon were to buy, since X doesn't really make any money, I mean, I guess it makes a spiritual currency. Um, like, how about Elon just buy all of our phone provider ISPs? Anyway, and then I think that the hybrid and the EVs versus the EVs are pure environmental progress. The hybrid still uses carbon emissions, so and they don't go fast up a hill. It really sucks. Anyway, but Omar kind of touched on the quarterly employee stock plan thing, which we might get into later in another minute. Did any of that make sense? Because I'm terrible at reading my own notes. Back to you guys.
Adopt Dogs. Go ahead.
I think I got it. I think it's unanimous. I want to formally nominate Machine to the board of Popeyes.
Well, if you guys think
Regular customer.
you have so much pull, then I think you should. I mean, move on. Why?
It's
Focus just
amazing to
on
walk
Tesla?
into a cafe and they know your name, isn't it?
Why would you focus just on Tesla? I think Popeyes is a publicly traded company, I believe, or at least under some umbrella. And I think we need to have a Popeyes live space and get everyone to invest. And then you guys can use your influence, your social influence capabilities to put me on the board.
Omar, then
That's
Kristen.
not why you're nice to them.
Look, so there's a couple of topics that I think are interesting that we could maybe consider talking about. One is this fact that Boston Dynamics has moved from a hydraulically actuated Atlas humanoid robot to a electrically actuated new design. And they made an announcement here on X. They took a shot at Elon and Tesla. They said, "We promise this robot isn't in a bodysuit." And Elon responded to that. So it's kind of interesting to see them trying to become a more serious player in the modern humanoid robot race. Obviously, they've been in robotics for a long time before any of this AI craze started. Another topic that I think is worth debating and discussing is Tesla compromising on their vehicle business because of FSD? There's a lot of people who seem to believe that FSD is not this great thing that's the future of the company, but it's actually the problem with the business. And it's actually what's holding it back. And Tesla would have had a $25,000 profitable car by now, if not for FSD. But the reason we don't have it is FSD. And the reason we're not going to have it for a long time is FSD, supposedly. So I think it's sort of an interesting question. Like, they're basically saying, okay, he wants to go balls to the wall on autonomy, but if he goes balls to the wall on autonomy and it doesn't work, we're not able to achieve autonomy quickly enough, then the company will suffer financially in a huge way compared to if they didn't do it. So I think that's kind of been a central discussion point on X in the last few days.
All right. I invited Wes Hicks to come up and just repeat his point and maybe elaborate a little bit more if he can. I thought it was a good point. But we have other things to talk about too. So we can always come back to this. Let's see. Machine, while we have you on here, did you, you'd go ahead.
Omar, I wanted to ask you because I don't think you're necessarily you're getting some of the points right with your second argument, but I feel like there's many shareholders who believe that you can do both. You can go balls to the wall with autonomy, but you can also still do things with the vehicle program. And so I guess do you not think they can do both at the same time?
No, I actually think that the shareholders who are worried about this are letting their imagination run a little bit wild. I don't think there's really a tension between FSD and the vehicle business at all. I don't think FSD eliminates the need for a low cost, high volume vehicle. I think it actually increases the need for a vehicle like that. And so I don't really see there being a tension. And I don't really see there being a risk of, let's say we get 2 years into the future and they've designed this vehicle and they can't figure out how to get manual controls on it or get it out in some form. Um, I think that these worries are a little bit over exaggerated, but a lot of people are really worried. These, reports from Reuters about the compact being canceled, Elon saying they're lying, that's not true. It seems like what's really happening is it's not being canceled, but the robo taxi is being prioritized higher. And a lot of people are kind of worried about that. You would often hear people say before this development happened, oh, Elon wanted to cancel the $25,000 car, but then Franz and Drew and everybody luckily convinced him to keep it. Thank God they did that. That would have been so stupid if they had just done a robo taxi. And now you're kind of seeing that kind of story come back again and people saying, okay, are they not going to have a 25K car ready because they made this big bet on autonomy that didn't pan out?
You'd see that Yoda.
Elon said outside of autonomy, he doesn't think Tesla's worth much. And I mean, I disagree. I think there is value to Tesla, but let's say you had a crystal ball and you knew that the first robo taxis were going to be perfect, but they were maybe going to be a little bit delayed. So maybe we're talking like early 2030s, like maybe 2032, 2033, that robo taxis become like a commercially viable product. In the meantime, how would you value the rest of the business then?
I think this business has incredible growth potential ahead of it. Really, you're seeing, I think, a little bit of a EV blowback. We've seen years of just incredible growth, and it's sort of stalling back for a number of reasons. You're seeing a lot of pushback, a lot of the fossil fuel companies sort of fighting for their product lineups, fighting against regulations like corporate average fuel economy standards that would cost them billions if raised. And so you're seeing a little bit of a pushback. Tesla remains the number one seller of EVs in the world in Q1, but things are just down a little bit year over year. So I really see EVs continuing to grow secularly. I think battery cost declines are on trend, on a multi-decade trend downwards. I think if you look at those trends, EVs are going to continue to accelerate, but there's just a little bit of an EV blowback, a pushback against the massive wave of growth. And, some of that being a little bit premature in some extent to the infrastructure, things like that. But I really expect that the core EV business is going to continue to grow. And I think the new Model 3, the Cybertruck, the new Model Y, once it comes out, these are products that they can eke a little more growth out of, maybe, 20% additional volume growth year over year, something like that, um, before they get these next gen vehicles out. And I think they're actually much further ahead on the next gen platform than people realize, just based on what they're telling suppliers. So mid 2025 start point for suppliers, even if they're late, let's say 6 to 12 months, that's still relatively soon that they have this platform that they're targeting for a 50% COGS reduction over the 3 and Y platform. So I think the vehicle business and the supercharging network business and these other businesses are actually going to continue to grow. The nature of the auto business is choppy, it's cyclical, and it's always going to be like that. But Tesla as a business, I think, won't always be dependent on autos. 5 years ago, people said you can't make an EV business profitable. They made it profitable. They sort of built their shack, but they didn't build it sturdy enough. It was too easy to knock down when strong economic winds came. And so we're having a period where earnings are not growing, and that's an issue. Now they're trying to take the business to the next level where I think with FSD and with a large base of subscription revenue coming in, you have a business that's more Apple-like in that it's more impervious to the cyclical downturns in the EV market.
Yoda.
Yeah, I think this discussion is overblown. If you look at whether it's Giga Mexico or India that's about to be announced, um, the future will have both robotaxis and the next gen vehicle that you can own. I think, Elon drives the alpha version of FSD that's a few, maybe at least a couple or several iterations ahead. And he's seeing something that the rest of us are not seeing. He's looking at spreadsheets that are looking at the capex required, and he's made a decision. Now, we don't know what that decision is exactly, but if you and I were provided the same information that he sees, which we're not, how would you know that you wouldn't make the same call? And so I think right now we don't have the information that he has or the leadership team has. And so we should probably just wait and see on August 8th. And in the meantime, trust that given that information, would Elon make the right decision and would the leadership make that right decision? If not, if you don't believe they would make the right decision, you should probably sell your shares to me.
Antoni Karalis.
Hi guys. I totally agree with what you just said, Tesla Yoda.
Okay, just as a one first. So you work at Lucid Motors, right?
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Tesla. So I'd like to share some perspective. I've done supercomputers and AI most of my life, and then automotive. So I'd like to share some perspective on what's I believe is going on with Tesla and AI right now. So yeah. So I'll make it simple. 3 things. One is that Tesla right now has like millions of chips, custom AI chips deployed all around the world. The one only company I can think that has that kind of deployment is actually NVIDIA. There might be a little different chips, but they're a little bit different in terms of business. So that's the equivalent. The second point is that Tesla has like over petabytes of proprietary data in what their users are doing. In the use case is autonomous driving. The only other company that has something equivalent in terms of resolution and quality and importance of data is Meta. Now, on top of that, Tesla is like the only company maybe in the Bay Area that has like this marvelous manufacturing ability that as Elon says, that the machine that makes the machine, that they're pushing it to the next level after the next level again and again. So if you add those three things together and remove what's happening right now, it's clear that Tesla is definitely an AI company. Like there's no other there's no other question in my mind, at least. So it's very simple. The multiple has to change. It's undervalued.
Are you a Tesla investor?
Sorry?
Are you an investor in the stock?
Yeah. I have Tesla stock, yes. Very long time.
Okay.
2013
All right.
to be precise. So that's my point of view. So the
Okay,
intermediate
thank you.
up and down, it's irrelevant to me. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you. All right. Interesting. Back to Yoda's point about, so Yoda said the future will have both robotaxi and the $25,000 Tesla you can own. Does everyone on the board agree with that statement? Okay. Looks like we're getting some thumbs ups for those of you who can't see the emojis. Yoda, would you like to put a percentage on it, like a breakdown? Let's say, 10 years, 20 years down the line, what percent of the miles are going to be traveled on robotaxis versus vehicles that are owned?
I think the closest proxy today would be looking at those who take public transportation and Uber. Those are immediately going to be migrated to robotaxis because the cost per mile on robotaxis will approach public transit.
Machine.
Don't ignore your baby. I hear the baby crying. Pick up the baby. Give her some milk.
I'm just at a shopping mall, and that is not my baby.
Wait till your wife hears that.
Do not pick up the baby and give it milk. They'll call the cops on you.
Wes, where do you stand on this baby milk situation?
Sorry, I kind of missed the last 15 seconds or so when I switched from YouTube live over to speaker.
Wow, I feel sorry for you. Anyway, what did you come up to say?
I came up to say that on the Tesla Motor Club forum, I wrote a post this morning about my feelings towards doing both a purchasable car, next gen car, and a non-purchasable dedicated robotaxi. I wanted to share my thoughts on that if you're open to it. Yeah, so after more thinking, like kind of the basic premise is like, why would Tesla sell a car that you would drive versus it driving itself all the time, when the version that would drive itself all the time will be utilized at least 3 times, more likely 5 times more, and that's going to advance the mission even faster, because those vehicles will always be used. They don't have to guess that you're going to drive it or not. They don't have to guess if you're going to park it or crash it. These other vehicles are just going to drive all the time. So that's going to advance the mission. So that would be prioritized above everything else. So my thought is that that's the path they're going down. And when Elon says balls to the wall, the only other time I've heard that is when he wrote this letter back in 2014 about whether they should do the fastest production car ever. Because there was a decision back then, maybe not, just do dual motor, just do high efficiency. And he's like, fuck it, let's make the fastest car ever made. And I feel like this is that point right now where he's making that same decision. He's seeing that autonomy is obvious at this point, and that they've, I'm not going to say that they've already succeeded, but it kind of looks like that from I still have yet to have a disengagement. I'm on my 6th day of driving. So it's pretty crazy. So anyway, that's my feeling. I can go more into detail, but don't want to take up too much time.
Thank you. Machine, you disagree with that? Why?
Tesla has not solved FSD. They have not solved FSD. Tesla has not solved FSD. I've worked on many machine learning algorithms. And when you get that specificity and sensitivity that's very high, 99.9%, that looks great. It's great on the road. It's an absolute gang bang busting L2 assist. But the move to go, if my boss then said, hey, can you make that 99% accuracy 99.9999%? I'd be like, oh crap. Like, that's still a lot of work. And I'm not saying they're not going to be able to get there. I'm just saying they're not there yet. And to estimate exactly when they pass that threshold is difficult. So I fully believe, Wes, that he has had no disengagements. But we've very clearly seen from the rest of people posting videos and statements that they have had critical disengagements. So just in aggregate, we know what the rate is, and we know it's not close yet to what's needed for autonomy. That's all.
Okay, there's just a news item real quick. Tesla cuts 14% of Buffalo staff in latest layoffs. Tesla is cutting 14% of the workforce in its factory in Buffalo, New York, according to filing with the states. That details begin to emerge. Okay. We have Earl on the speaker board. Let's go to Wes real quick to give him a chance to respond to Machine's uncertainty about if Tesla solved autonomy, and then we'll go to Earl.
Yeah, just to be clear, of course they haven't solved it yet, but he sees the future. So my point is that when you throw, like we've talked about more than once here, when you throw more compute at it, when you throw more clips at it, you're just going to get more and more accuracy, more precision over time, and things are just going to get better. And obviously there's features that aren't implemented yet. So this is a long road still ahead of us to get to SAE level 4 and level 5, but he sees this in front of him now. He sees the light at the end of the tunnel. He feels like there's an architecture in place that he can execute on, with his the infrastructure that he's got a plan to build out. So I'm surprised you're not mentioning this when you said what you said, because I know that that's how things happen in the world of tech.
Okay, Machine and then Earl. Sorry, Earl.
The issue is that all of those relationships work, but we don't know when. And I think we can both agree that Elon has become more confident than he has before with FSD, and he's made plenty of projections on when he thought FSD would be, quote, solved, right, years and years out, and those were all wrong. And I think now he's upped at another level of confidence, but that doesn't mean he has full grasp of the information and is very accurate in projecting when it's going to happen, because historically he has not. And so I agree with you that they're on the right path.
All right. Earl, welcome to the boards. You don't visit often. I know you have strong views on. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I actually joined to speak by accident. When I got a little panicked when you said I was up. I'm like, I didn't. I think I accidentally left and came back, and then I felt weird just leaving without saying anything. But I could talk a minute about FSD. I don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, either FSD or the proxy statement that went out today. Either one.
Yeah, just probably to reiterate what people are already saying, but like the step from for me, the step from 10 to 11 was huge. It was so much better here in Alaska, which is always amazing to me, like how much data could they have from Alaska. And then the step from 11 to 12 was much bigger. So I find myself using it all the time now. It's really does drive like a human. It's still, like everybody, it does make some dopey errors sometimes, but it's really good. And I think that, to the last person's comment about Elon's predictions, that I mean, I'm the first one to make fun of them. I think they're pretty hilarious, but I hate to sound like that person, but I do think this time is a little bit different, because we're doing this end-to-end neural network, and it's working better than what they did before. And that's not my field. But to me, as a user, that just seems like, even if this was driving as well as 11, to me it would still be a success. But the fact that they've changed things up and they're doing what they're doing, and it's really functional and very usable, I think speaks
Okay,
volumes.
so if Tesla is doing so well on FSD, and you believe the light at the end of the tunnel is there, why did you have a space titled "Vote No"?
Oh, I like to title my spaces to troll people because they don't subscribe. So I like that it pops up and people get mad at me. So it's fun.
All right,
I
sounds
didn't
good.
even talk about them on my space. I think I was complaining about something else, but no, I like to title things funny like that. As far as voting
Okay,
goes,
gotcha.
I think that this is one of those things that it's kind of like already happened. So that's why I wasn't upset with the court case, because I felt like, well, this is just going to be vote. It sucks, but they're just going to vote and fix it. So I can't imagine on any planet that it wouldn't pass. But I'll probably run around and tell people to vote no for a while just to get some clicks for some revenue sharing. But I don't see it as being an issue. And does it even matter what retail does? Aren't most of the votes going to be institutional anyway? I don't know how that works, but anyway, I'll
Yeah,
stop talking. But thank you for bringing me up, and I'm sorry to join by accident.
that's all right. Always good to have you on. Wes, then Yoda.
Hey, question for maybe tech folks on the board. What do you make of Ashok's tweet about this is the beginning of the end?
Machine. Or let's go to Yoda first. Yoda.
The beginning of the end for driving. That's the way I read it.
All right, and what's your other point that you want to make, Yoda?
Yeah, I think FSD is ready for Elon and team to go all in when two factors are solved. So one is, what is the right price point? And by the way, they're related, but one is the price. And we now know that's $99 a month. The second is that the quality of the experience has to be good enough so that the subscriber does not unsubscribe at the end of the month. And that can be probably judged by the leap from version 11 to version 12. If I was just personally speaking, if I was on version 11, I may not want to subscribe or recommend someone to subscribe continuously. But with 12, the quality of the experience reached a point where I definitely would want to retain the subscription. And so when you have that, when you hit that maturity, you basically have a product that can grow organically. And so I think that's what probably Elon saw. Now, whether you deploy that on a robotaxi first or a autonomous vehicle that you could own, I think it's a separate question. But I think for FSD, it's reached that maturity.
Machine.
Is there a question?
Yeah, the question is, what do you think about Ashok's beginning of the end tweet?
I mean, I think it means they're excited about taking this version and training it as much as they can. They're going to get a lot better. It doesn't give a timeline. And my main issue is exactly how long it's going to take. And I don't think, whatever, I've gone over the details before. You can go look up neural scaling laws. I'm trying to study this in detail. to understand what the limiting factors are potentially going to be. In my mind, it still seems like the inference compute is going to need to be quite a bit larger to support the model that will have a low enough error rate to be robotaxi level. That's my main critical point. And for long-term investors who are just holding the stock and they don't care necessarily about when it appreciates, like, I get why it doesn't matter to you. I have a different sort of vision trading where I'm not, it's a little different. So that's why I'm a little more sensitive to that being more certain.
Okay, thank you. Did you read, let's change topics. Did you read James Katz's post about the income statement forecast? What'd you think?
It all seemed reasonable, his assumptions. Slightly higher COGS, I believe he said, because of Cybertruck. Some better things with regulatory credits and foreign currency. Overall, it's obviously lower earnings than people would hope for. But the market probably at this point has priced a lot of that in. But as I say that, of course, the last 4 earnings calls, there's been a massive sell-off after, even though everyone expected things to be a certain way. So I don't know, that the earnings themselves are not my main concern at this point. My main concern is earnings call and clarification of the future trajectory, because it's clear the automotive growth right now is low and the stock is still valued as if it's going to grow earnings in the next few years. And so I believe some investors are going to want to know where that's going to come from to not cause a re-rating.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, do you doubt that auto deliveries will grow in the future?
I mean, deliveries will grow this year, and earnings probably have.
You think they're going to grow this year?
Well, I mean, from 380, I hope so. Yeah, I do believe they're going to grow. I believe they're going to grow.
No, I'm sorry. I meant from 2023 to 2024.
No, they're going to be down. It's going to be flat, approximately. It might be slightly higher, but I don't think
2025.
I think it should be higher. There's different economic factors that'll improve a bit, and so I mean, I do think it'll be somewhat higher, but it's not just about deliveries. It's about what the listing price, the sold prices are, and margins. This is sort of an obvious statement, and the stock is currently priced at PE ratio of over 60, and earnings are going down, and it's kind of hard to. Usually, that's a reserve for companies that are growing earnings at a pretty good clip, 30-40% year over year. And so when you're in this situation, people are holding on and assuming at some point it's going to rebound to kind of correct back so that those forward earnings still make sense. And for Tesla, it seems like for 2024, that's kind of already gone. So I think people will be looking toward 2025, and they need clarity where that growth in earnings is going to come from. It's still possible. I just think they're going to need more insight.
All right. Let me ask you this. So you don't currently have shares in the company and you play both sides of the company. Would anything that could happen on this vote, any of the proposals would lead to you buying shares or calls or puts, kind of changing your position? Like, for example, it sounds like you're okay with giving Elon his previous comp package, but you're against voting for Kimball. Let's say, for example, if you discussed that one quite a bit. Let's say Kimball is on the board versus Kimball is not on the board. Does that change anything about your position?
Not really. I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what you.
Exactly.
But no, on the upside. However, if they vote no for the compensation plan, then that's a sell situation, at least short term, because there's a high risk of the CEO leaving, and the sentiment will, at least short term,
Exactly.
So it's only
Exactly.
downside.
That's my other question for you. What do you think would happen to the stock if, let's say, either Kimball didn't make it to the board or Elon didn't get his comp package? What do you think would happen to the stock price?
I don't know if Kimball matters that much either way. It may be a slight negative effect if he doesn't make it. But see, if Elon Musk doesn't get his compensation plan, I think there's at least like a 15% correction downwards in the few weeks after that.
Okay, you'd see. What do you think?
I agree with what Machine said, and I think that's why
I think he said 15, right? Actually, did you say 15?
Yeah, 1.5.
I would be surprised if it's that low.
But I think Omar made a good point earlier that that's why voting, at least for the compensation package, is a pretty important vote, because you don't want to entertain the idea to Elon to maybe work on other projects.
Yeah. Omar, what do you think would happen to the stock if Elon left?
If Elon left the company, well, it would probably go down.
By how much?
I don't know. Nobody can predict what the market is going to do. But it
I mean,
wouldn't be good. It
who
would
would even
be
be the
the worst
CEO?
day ever for Tesla. Worst performance ever in a single day.
Yeah. Machine.
The stock is priced for a lot of future growth still right
Right.
now. And so a lot of that is trust in Musk bringing it home. So if he's gone, if he actually says I'm leaving the company, like that's at minimum 30% decrease in share price. Your PE ratio still is in like 40, which is still higher than, say, Nvidia. So
Right.
that's like minimum, and it could go lower than that.
Yeah. Now, why did you say 15?
That was for the vote. If the vote for his compensation plan, that doesn't mean he automatically leaves, but it's like partially there, right?
Well, that's what I meant. Sorry, I kind of equated in my head.
Well, you have to be clear. See, it's very important.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm dealing with a lot of moderation. I'm dealing with a lot of moderation work. There are people requesting to speak 20 times. I have to remove. So sorry that I'm not paying 100% attention to you. You too.
Machine, I had a couple questions for you. What would you need to see on 8.8 or here to feel like fully convinced that Tesla's plan was the right strategy to like go back all in, or what share price would you have to see that would make you really interested again?
Yeah, those are, obviously somewhat related, but two separate questions. I would say, first of all, just as a base price, assuming nothing else changed, if it gets down into the 130s is where I would start buying again. And then around 100 is like a real, I would say, heavy buy, because you're then at a P ratio that's like under 40. And I would highly believe that Tesla would start growing earnings again. And that would be a huge payoff. Guaranteed 100% return, doubling the share price in, let's say, a year. And but that's just in current state. Now, if you talk about robotaxi, I don't care at all about the vehicle. Like, that's very minor to me. I mean, you want to make sure it has enough sensors. What I care about is the clarity on the actual plan of why they establish why they think they're going to achieve an accuracy good enough to support robotaxi. That needs to be clarified, because otherwise, I mean, you got to get outside the Tesla bubble. There's many people in machine learning communities who argue Tesla can't do this for certain reasons, in most of compute, inference compute. And so, that's my main hesitation to this being achieved in a shorter period of time. And for me to, want to go all heavy into Tesla at current share price or even above, assuming it corrects before this event, would be clarity on that. Or advancing, let's say the FSD beta tracker starts going up to like 2,000 miles per critical disengagement, right? And then you're starting to see big gains. Would make me also start thinking about it. By the way, Yaman, you can't even manage the YouTube comments and the X comments at the same time. How do you expect Elon to handle SpaceX and Twitter and YouTube at the same time? Is YouTube, Tesla?
Doing my best. Looking crazy right now. Emotions are high. Dude, so I just got accused of spreading FUD. I don't even know what I just said. Like, what FUD just spread? Go ahead.
People, I think you're seeing this too, because we both been around the block for a while, and there was legitimate, huge cases of FUD for many years. And now I think people I'm not even joking, have PTSD. It's like any mention of anything, you can't have a rational conversation without people getting fearful that you can't even discuss anything that's not a positive light. People are like, oh my God, you're just spreading fake news. The reason I didn't even look at any comments, but I surely guarantee what they're saying you're spreading FUD is that you talked about the CEO potentially leaving. Like, what happens if he leaves? You can't look. These people don't even want you to have the conversation. You want to talk about free speech? These people want to shut your speech down. Why are they on the X platform? Go over to NPR.
Yeah, and they're in my space. Like, that's the other thing. You don't have to be in the space if you don't want to be in the space.
Machine, I appreciate you being here and bringing some levity and rationality, and fully support your Popeye CEO bid. As far as inference compute, right, we're definitely seeing a trend toward local models, LLMs that are running well. Obviously, Tesla's model is not an LLM, but we're definitely seeing a trend, and you could argue it's exponential, toward lower compute requirements to get great results. How does that figure into your calculation that inference is going to be possibly holding us back for a very long time?
That's a great question, and one I've been considering, and I need to dig in deeper, because that's obviously a huge part of the equation. But if we look at scaling laws, we're seeing things that my estimation is that if you didn't have any distillation of a model, right, that you can get the same performance at a smaller size, you're looking at a 100x increase in model size to get the requisite error rate down that we need. And I don't think it's actually going to take 100x because of some of the reasons you mentioned, that it's going to be able to be reduced. But do I think it's going to be able to be reduced 100x? Like, I have to, that's where I have to get into the details. And of course, no, you can study all you want. None of that information is going to perfectly apply to Tesla's situation. No one's done these studies on video. There's image transformer scaling papers and model distillation, but there's not as much on video for object detection, segmentation, and all that. So it's a big part, and I think no one should make proclamations for sure unless they consider what you mentioned.
Sure, we're trying to figure out where two exponential curves intersect, right? Very difficult.
Kristen.
This is completely superficial, but as Machine likes Popeye, his image is a Popeye.
Wow, this is great. I never thought of that, but even this image is perfect for me. Thank you.
It's like you. All right. This case has been going on for 2 hours. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak. Waves of Life has a question. James. He says, I hope this makes sense on a chart. Where does FSD, ADAS, and a government requirement that a huge percentage of vehicles must include more self-driving ability and time driving, autonomous driving that humans are allowed to drive across? And then he says, my main question is that FSD and other ADAS systems may achieve 99.99% level of critical disengagements and 99.99% higher safety just by forced adoption by all auto manufacturers because of government regulations. If anybody understood that question, Machine?
I don't exactly, but I'm going to use that question as a platform to ask Wes about this, not ruling or procedure J something that he's been arguing with Nightshade on the Tesla Motors Club forum about, that seems to have requirements for what not features that the self-driving software has to have to be autonomously driven. And I don't know if you could discuss a little about that and communicate to us people who don't really understand. He's gone.
Xander.
Hey, just came up to kind of counter that you're spreading FUD thing. I think Machine's point is spot on. We really need to discuss all of this stuff as bulls, and it's imperative to look for red flags when you have and challenge your investment thesis. So I really respect the conversation, and I want more bears, but just with good arguments, not with terrible ones, because some of them are terrible.
Yeah. Thank you, Xander. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Omar.
I think that autonomy is solved. It's no longer a technical question like it was in the past of when it's achievable or how it's going to be achieved or what year it's going to be achieved. We have in Waymo here in San Francisco a driverless car service that works 24/7. It works 365. It works day and night anywhere in San Francisco you want to go. So we have an existence proof. At the very least, they can just copy them, right? They could put LiDAR on their vehicle. They could do HD map if that was necessary. We have a proof of concept that you can actually run a service and have an 80% reduction in injury causing accidents. This was a study done by an insurance company, and they have all the data on how often people really crash. And they evaluated this and they said, wow, it really is bringing down injury causing crashes, which is huge for us as an insurance company. When someone gets injured, we have to pay. And you see what's going on with FSD. You just see the comments on X. People are saying, I'm using it. It's doing my drive with zero interventions. It seems like autonomy is being solved. And we're still just scratching the surface. This is an early version of 12. This isn't even 12.4 with reverse and smart summon and a better version of the model. We haven't even scratched the surface of hardware 4, training a hardware 4 specific model, let alone hardware 5 or hardware 6 or whatever we're going to have by the time this next gen platform actually hits the market. And the dojo build out and the build out of NVIDIA's is just at the beginning. So there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. We haven't even started building in some of this multimodal LLM intelligence into the car, which I think they're going to start doing, probably on the server side and probably also in the car. So there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. People have demonstrated operating real driverless services. The smart thing may seem like it is to be ready for anything. But I think what the smart thing to actually do is to be prepared for a future that's increasingly looking inevitable. Those arguments about is it possible? Do you need AGI for driverless? Can it be done? How can it be done? Those arguments have been knocked down one by one. It's happening. And it would be foolish not to prepare.
Thanks, Omar. Let's change some topics. Let's talk about other stuff. I see you posted Elon is visiting India soon, right? Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Well, the next generation platform is much further along than people expect. The team has been doing a lot of work on this, and it's a big deal. They're really trying to simplify vehicle production. They're trying to make more units of this than the sexy vehicles combined once it's ramped. So, this is a hugely important thing. And they're going to be doing it for the first time in Austin. And they're targeting 10,000 units a week out of Austin by mid 2026. Then, after that, they're going to have the Mexico facility, which is going to be the high volume facility for North America. They're going to have Berlin as the high volume facility for Europe. And they're also going to have an Asian location. It's increasingly looking like that Asian location is going to be India. So we're talking millions of units out of each of these high volume factories, millions of units out of Mexico, millions out of Berlin, and millions out of the Asian location as well. So we've already seen them start importing the cars with the reduced tariff. They usually allow that if you're going to make a manufacturing investment. So the question now is, what is the scope of this manufacturing investment? Is this a full-on gigafactory where they're going to make batteries and cars? Is it just sort of an assembly plant where you take in parts that are coming from China or other places and kind of, assemble them together? Is it going to be, maybe a smaller thing like a mega pack factory or something like that? I don't know. But it sounds like there's definitely something going on here. And my best guess is that this is for the next gen platform. If you have a platform that's actually half the cost of the 3 and Y, I think it does open up new markets like South America, which BYD has started entering in, as well as markets like India that are a little bit priced out of the 3 and Y today, but might be more receptive to something that's about half the cost and produced locally.
Thank you. Any points from the rest of the speaker boards about Elon's visit to India? Next gen vehicle. If not, we have another question for Omar. I'll pin at the top, Omar. Alphabet has asked us to talk about this. Alphabet is a strong supporter of the space, always quality information. And so he asked us to talk about Stephen Spencer's post, and Alphabet followed up with, and he mentioned you, Omar, too. You can say this in your next stations. Thoughts on the Dojo data center and 2 projects Badlina was working on.
Yeah, I think the news reports, we've heard some rumors in the press that Musk had been working on building a huge Dojo data center in Texas and that he was annoyed that it was delayed and hadn't been making more progress. We also heard that they were going to be building a Dojo data center in Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. So it does suggest that they're kind of turning a corner on the Dojo project, that this has gone from being more of an experimental thing to something that they're actually actively using for training, I would assume, if they're making these kinds of investments. And it could be really explaining what Musk means when he says we're not as computationally constrained as we were in the past.
Machine, have you seen this post at the top?
I saw it. I don't really have much to say on whether they should build that at Texas. There was comments about it like, why would it be there? It's like too dusty at the site. I don't know. What's your question?
Stop stealing my phrases and come up with your own. All right. Let me just read this real quick. When Elon Musk arrived at Tesla's Austin factory last week to tour an expansion project on the south side of 10 million square foot facility, he was furious. The expansion was part of a high priority project for Musk, a data center for Dojo, the supercomputer Tesla is developing. Dojo is necessary to make full self-driving capabilities powered by AI and reality for Tesla's electric vehicles. But on that day, in mid-April, this is too long. I can't read this. So long. That's all the attention span I have. If anybody else wants to kind of summarize it, they're welcome to. Xander.
I have an unrelated question, but regarding semi.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Xander.
Quick question. I watched a video maybe 2 weeks ago regarding the progress of the plants being built out, and it seemed like there isn't much. Does Omar or anyone kind of have any intel on what the delay is on that front, or is it battery, or it's not the focus? What do you guys think?
Omar, did you have any say on that?
I mean, I don't know what the latest update on the semi manufacturing is. Last we heard from the company, they said they plan to put it into, serious production this year in Nevada. I haven't been following like any drone shots of the construction or anything like that, but hopefully they do actually start producing them this year. I don't know how much construction they need to do to make that happen and how much they can utilize the existing footprint. Semi is going to be a low volume product, so it doesn't need a lot of robots installed like some of the higher volume products. A lot of it is kind of just hand assembled and with a lot less sort of equipment involved. It does also need a lot of battery cells. It's been using 2170 cells in the past. So that could be a potential holdup given that these are, IRA cells that qualify for the $7,500 tax credit. But from what we've seen from Pepsi, they've been loving the trucks. They've been able to use them, drive more than 1,000 miles a day in some cases by charging in the middle of the day. It's the only truck that has great fast charging. So the customers seem pretty happy with it. Independent testing looks good. Just excited for them to actually get the serious production up in Nevada whenever that happens.
Machine. No hands mode.
It just seems like from what I heard is that they haven't really sorry. Excuse me. Started building the factory for it. And I don't know what it's supposed to look like. I mean, my main takeaway is I think it's like Omar said, a battery issue. I don't think they have the battery supply yet lined up for it. And it seems highly unlikely. I mean, it's already mid-April that they're going to be in volume production of the semi this year. Is that unreasonable to think? And it somehow still comes back to 4680. I mean, 4680 was planned to be volume production like 2 years ago, and I think that's kind of causing this downstream effect of prioritization, causing some other models not to be released.
Yeah, I don't expect semi in volume production anytime soon. December, sorry. I know you have a reservation. You're waiting on it.
I mean, I think you can get a production lineup at Giga Nevada and start making a few units. The thing is, you also need a charging build out to go alongside it. You know what you consider volume production. Uh, I'm not really sure what volume means for the semi or where they're going to be
Albums.
producing it at steady state, but it definitely does seem like the battery constraint, as Machine alluded to, has become more serious, especially given that the IRA has sort of given these batteries a priority status that didn't exist when they decided to make the semi using a 2170 pack. So that's a little bit sort of unexpected there, that the IRA valued these cells more highly and that they became so valuable to put in the Model Y. And I think that may be contributing as well. Now, if they scaled 4680 massively and had an excess of cells, then you might actually see them bring some of these new products to the market.
So
You cut out, Aman. What'd you say?
I just say your name.
Yeah, I just put out a post that Tesla launched a new website. Someone sent this to me earlier today, and honestly, I thought it was fake because the website address is supporttteslavalue.com. But Tesla just filed an SEC filing. It's legit, and it's in connection with its 2024 annual shareholding rating. And basically, it just goes over some of the proxy. They've never done this, by the way. This is new. But they go over how much value Elon has created at Tesla. They have graphs and numbers and statistics and whatnot. And then they go over why Tesla should incorporate in Texas, why Texas and why not Delaware. And then they go into depth about why people should vote for reinstating Elon Musk's compensation package,
Right.
ratifying that.
I pinned Sawyer's tweet at the top if you'd like to check it out. And Sean Kelly replied to the space with this link first. Sean, would you like to talk about it?
Yeah, so as part of the shareholder website, I get emails that are alerted, and I received that from the Tesla IR site. But I know that Elon spoke about getting an app store on the infotainment system. I was wondering, he did say that when FSD is getting close to being solved, he would do that. And I think that would be create great shareholder value, just like Apple has their app store. If I can get anyone's thoughts on that.
Omar and then Bradford.
Yeah, this is a really interesting website. It's interesting that they mention that Elon and Kimball will both be abstaining from the vote. So Elon will not be using his shares to vote in favor of his own compensation package, and Kimball will not be voting his own shares, which is going to make it obviously tougher for that approval to come through. So I think, this is a really nice looking website and really highlights what a critical issue this is and how important this is to explain to the shareholder base.
Sawyer, then Bradford.
Tesla's Q1 earnings call, Q&A, is now open. For those that really want a question answered, I can't begin to tell you how crucial the first hour is in terms of submitting your questions, because typically whatever questions are first, just submitted, those tend to get the most votes and those are what asked. So if you want a question asked, just quickly go in there and submit your question.
Thank you, Sawyer. Bradford.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by the dismissal of the Tesla Semi. We see videos of them moving quite a bit of ground in Gigafactory, Nevada. I think you're right. It's not this year, but there's an account, Zangler, Zanegler, that does some flyovers there. And from the looks of it, if they were to start putting in like foundation stuff, they should be able to get something going next year.
Okay. How many semis do you expect produced and delivered next year?
I agree it's lower volume. I just have a hard time imagining the line itself. I'm not a manufacturing person, but I gotta think it would be at least 15,000 a year they'd be able to do if they could add some automation. Right now, they're just made by hand, and it's very slow going. It's certainly disappointed, along with many of you, that it hasn't started in big volume yet. They need a manufacturing line to greatly expand the volume. They need automation. They need things to just help move the metal faster. So for them to put out the, I'd say foundation might be a strong word, but to level the land, it's a pretty big space they're carving out for it. I think they're serious about it, and I'd be optimistic it'd be at least like 15,000 a year.
All right, Xander, there you go.
Do you know
Bradford,
what
do
your
you have
spot
any?
is, Xander? Do you have like is there a reservation number tracker or translator?
No translator. And thank you guys for these answers. I appreciate playing some ball. So it's good conversation. I'm reservation 15,000. So you nailed my number. I don't know how many units go into each reservation number. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, Zangler or whatever his name is, that's the footage I watch and track.
Bradford, any thoughts on voting for Elon's comp or Kimball's reelection?
I'm very pleased with the proposal by Tesla. As soon as I understood the Delaware ruling, the rescension or whatever of Elon's package, and my main thought that night was just that they propose it again and provide the disclosures that the Delaware judge think that Tesla missed. So I'm like extremely happy that they proposed it this way and added the disclosures. Hearing Alexandra's comments about reincorporating in Texas and how Tesla talked about how they narrowed it down, I think they went about that a great way. I'm going to be voting my shares as soon as possible, and look to hear from others when that voting gets enabled by the various brokerages. Yeah, I think many of us have done well financially because of Tesla and because of the efforts of Team Tesla and by Elon. Elon fully deserves the 2018 package, and this is not a recommendation, but I will be voting for ratifying or reinstating the package from 2018. And I'm really disappointed by comments by Ross Gerber recently, basically calling the Tesla board of directors illegal. Yeah, maybe it's against the rules to have like non-independent directors from the NASDAQ, but it's not illegal. And it's not something that is hidden from public view. The public knew that Kimball Musk is Elon's brother. We all knew that. We all knew that Ingracias was like, a friend of Elon's and, also on the board of SpaceX. So like these things were not a mystery. So I'm excited with how things are proceeding, and I think like I'm optimistic that all will be well. And I think like if the Tesla shareholders vote in favor of the package again, I think the judge is going to have a really hard time, and it's going to set up Tesla to win on appeal if somehow the judge goes against the shareholders again. I think now is the time that people be sure to vote. If you support Tesla, if you vote support Elon, and this is also a critical time to try out version 12 of the software for yourself but also show that to the people in your circle that you may have shown other versions of the software to. Yeah, I was excited or somewhat hesitant to share it before. I did share it like version 11 to probably over 100 different people, if not more. But I'm thrilled to share the new software with people, and I think those are some concrete things we could do to help support Tesla during this transitional phase.
One second, Meta. David Garfit. David, you have to unmute yourself for us to hear you. Can you guys see David as a speaker? Okay. Meta?
I was going to mention that say.com just opened up their questions. And I was
Yeah.
wondering, I don't think it's against the rules to say this. So I'm hopeful folks would be interested in going and asking thoughtful questions now, so that I think the earlier questions tend to get more traffic than the ones that come later. So
Did you submit?
I didn't want to say which one I'm submitting. I will submit one, but they will all be in the vein of asking about FSD, safety data, disengagement data, if they're willing to share that kind of stuff. But I think it's against the rules to promote your specific question, so I don't want to do that.
I mean, we don't have a rule in this space about that. I know Tesla discouraged social media influencers, YouTube creators. I know that, but
Okay, well, I mean, I'm going to be asking when they think they'll be applying for the AV permits in California, and if they're tracking a specific metric like miles per disengagement.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good that informed folks, especially the questions in their expertise area. I think I would love to hear the answer to that question, or other FSD type of questions, or AI machine.
Yeah, I submitted a question which is related, stuff I've been talking about related to how I want him to answer how confident they are in terms of their inference compute needs are going to be satisfactory for robotaxi. So we'll see. I'm sure we'll get not upvoted enough. I see the top question already is, can we make FSD transfer permanent? This is so stupid.
Yeah,
What a waste of time.
It's so stupid.
The second one is, what is progress in Cybertruck ramp? I'm not saying it's a bad question. It's just kind of obvious. Like,
Yeah.
they'll probably talk about it anyways. Can we get like nuanced questions that normal, institutional, the analysts in the call aren't going to ask?
Temp.
I just want to ask Bradford what you know about the appeals process. It seems just infuriating that Tesla shareholders might pay these lawyers $5 billion.
I am not a lawyer. I don't know. But I think like if we have a second shareholder vote, it's going to be it'll set Tesla up well on the appeal. If for some reason the judge just ignores it because she wants to make history.
Meta, what else would you like to know about FSD, AI, Optimus?
I mean, at the moment, the compute question that Machine asked is a good question. I think the other question I would personally like to see is just what their plan is in terms of informing the media, the population outside of regulators about the safety. And that's too hard of a question to phrase. It's too vague. So specifically, I think just going back to the one question I'm trying to phrase is, what metrics are they using to convince themselves that things are safe? Because as I understand it, that's the core requirement for applying for an AV permit in California. And I think that is the strictest of the permits.
All right.
I'm actually curious if Ken has had a chance to look at those laws, but I understand, there's a ton of other stuff that's going on in the world, so it's completely okay for now.
Yeah, actually, reading talk about the California autonomy laws, correct?
Specifically the testing permit.
Yeah, actually, that was last night's bedtime reading material. So,
Is it okay if we ask your thoughts on it?
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, if you have questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. Yeah, absolutely.
This is a question for the Tesla Nazi. Is it okay if I ask him some questions?
Yeah, go.
In reading that law, is it your interpretation that, or it doesn't have to be your interpretation, but there was some debate about Tesla is quote unquote skirting the law because they have a ADAS system that is eventually going to become L4. To your reading of it, does it sound like Tesla's disqualified from the reporting requirements because of the way the law is written? I can bring up the particular section if you want.
Well, Tesla has never applied for, to my knowledge, for a permit for testing a driverless and or an autonomous vehicle with a driver. So therefore, if you've never applied for the permit, you wouldn't be subject to the rules of people who have obtained a permit.
Agreed. And the rules that require you to apply for a permit, if I understand correctly, if as long as they don't get rid of the nag, I think they don't ever have to apply for the permit. Is that correct?
No, they don't have to apply until they think they want to operate an autonomous driving vehicle on their road. And how I'm interpreting that is if they want to have a commercial endeavor, then they wouldn't need to apply for the permit or just say, hey, this is totally hands-free. You can run it on the road without a driver in it.
Exactly. So even if they got rid of the nag, if they required a driver to be present in the driver's seat, make some kind of commitment, that'd be different. So until they make the statement that you don't need to be in the driving the vehicle, they don't have to apply, right?
Or they don't want to be a commercial endeavor would be my interpretation. That's correct.
Interesting. So what could you expand on what do you mean by if they don't intend to be a commercial endeavor?
If they don't want to hire their cars out for money. So you can't, if you want to be an Uber, I think you have to apply for the permit. If you don't want to be an Uber and you just want to allow your customer that you sold the car to drive it autonomously while they're sitting in the driver's seat, I don't think you have to apply for the permit.
Oh, correct. Yeah. So as long as there's a person in the driver's seat, they don't have to apply for the permit. That was my interpretation too. So basically, until you say we intend to not have someone in the driver's seat, you don't have to apply.
Or if you want to run a car with a person in the driver's seat and collect a fare, I think you would have to apply.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you're going to collect a commercial fare, okay. And then the other one is on this was unclear to me, on the requirement that you have a live link. I read it a few times and I couldn't parse it correctly. Do you need to have somebody monitoring the vehicle only during the testing phase when there's nobody in the car? Or is the requirement that somebody has to monitor some number of vehicles always, even after they get the permit? Or even after they're out of the testing phase, rather?
My reading of it is if there's not a person in the driver's seat, you need to have a link that can monitor the vehicle. If there's a person in the driver's seat, then you do not.
Even after the testing phase?
I'm not sure about that. I think that goes a little bit further than what this law is covering. But from the way I read it is if you apply for the testing permit, whether you're driverless, if you're driverless, then you need the link. If you have a driver, then you do not. Because of what the link is supposed to do. The link is supposed to be able to respond to situations in which a human needs to intervene. and or speak to somebody else, i.e. a police officer or an emergency vehicle, something of that nature.
Cool. Thanks.
Yep.
I think you can go, Wes.
Yeah, and also I would agree with that. Also, my reading is that when you're testing, you always have to have enough telemetry delivered to know that you can fill out every one of the pieces of data for the various reports that they require. So that involves, miles traveled, crash data, disengagements, interventions, monitoring, time to retrieval, stuff like that. All that stuff needs to be collected whether there's a driver in the car or not.
Right. But this, I'll just go the other direction too. There's nothing in the law requiring LiDAR. There's nothing in the law requiring miles per disengagement. While there is a reporting requirement, there's not a maintenance requirement.
There is for like miles to disengagement. I'm trying to remember what the exact wording is. I had it written down. I can look it up here or just pull up the form which I downloaded. We're talking about something that is has to have material value. So you have to have some amount of safety inherently built into the system. So while there's not a foundational exact number, we're talking about something that's materially safer than a human. And it talks about that in that's kind of nebulous detail. But the SAE, just to reiterate, the SAE levels are not a requirement, and the law itself to get this permit to be testing is something that enhances the safety of the roads. In fact, that might be one of the words that they use: enhances safety.
I'm curious what section that was in, Wes. From my understanding, there is actually a connection to the SAE levels in terms of what qualifies as an AV vehicle. Because if you meet the SAE level description, but you don't apply for the permit, you could be in violation. But as
true.
As Ken pointed out, because the level requires you plan to not have a person behind the wheel, that alone kind of excludes it.
Yeah. So just to be clear for everybody, the SAE levels are all individual. They're unique, and they all have features associated with them. And there's a bunch of charts and that demonstrate that. And there's a lot of examples that they say, a car in this condition applies to this level, a car in this condition applies to this level. So all the levels are mutually exclusive, and they all have different features. That's not to say that a given software set can't move from one level to another. It can. So in other words, if you have a driver behind the wheel, it becomes a level 4. If you don't, it becomes a level 5. That's super basic, but that's one of the areas that it covers.
And I think the most important piece is just if you're not 3, you don't have to apply, which is why it was pertinent when Tesla was asked, do you plan to become level 3 or higher than level 2? They said, no, not in the near future, AKA we're not applying for the permit.
As I understand the SAE levels, I would argue that the Tesla right now is a level 3, according to the J3016 levels of driving automation. The Tesla would qualify for a level 3.
Look at the 3016, the updated version that came out a couple of years ago. I think it's June 2021. You have to download that update from the website. You got to sign in and all this stuff. Anyway, it's free. Anybody can do it. And it talks about how level 3 still requires the software having liability for an amount of time. And then you get some amount of time before the driver is asked to take over and assume liability. So that's a level 3. So we used to call this safe harbor, but now it just calls, I think that literally they just say, comes to a safe stop and puts on the hazard lamps, which is funny that they still say lamp. But that's what it says currently.
Okay, because the form I'm looking at right now says traffic jam chauffeur. And then definition of that would be longitudinal and
Yeah,
lateral.
keep reading on the traffic chauffeur, and it'll talk about how the system can act on its own independently of the driver for a period of time. It gives it like 10 seconds or something for the driver to take over. In other words, the driver doesn't have to have eyes on the road or be paying attention. That's the difference between level 2 and level 3.
Okay, but isn't the system capable of doing that now?
No, they have active driver monitoring. And so that's what the cabin camera is doing. It's making sure that you have eyes on the road. And if you take eyes on the road off for more than a few seconds, it will nag you. The other system doesn't care if you have eyes on the level 3 system doesn't care if you have eyes on the road. Once it warns you, and via bells and whistles, UI, all that stuff, you have an amount of time before you have to take over. The system comes to a stop.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. The updated one, just if you have more time for bedtime reading, is really, really good because there's a ton of examples in there. I mean, there might be over 100 in all, like every section, every subsection has examples in it. And there's lots of charts and graphs and a lot of stuff to put you to sleep.
And personally, this is why the removal of the nag was what I was referencing. And essentially, you could argue when Elon says we're going to remove the nag, that may correlate with we're going to apply for a testing permit.
Yep, I'd agree with that. And I'm really, really looking forward to that day when they do that. Because I don't think, maybe to put a finer point on it, I don't think he'll apply for a permit unless he knows he can achieve and pass the test.
Yeah, and I guess this is another follow-up question, Ken, because this was asked by others. From my understanding, the law says for test vehicles, you must have employees or vendors or something along those lines. Do you know if the existing customers, if there is a way by which they could theoretically use it if they signed a contract or something along those lines? I'm just trying to understand what the hurdle would be if Tesla decided they want to enable it for many cars all at once, or if they have to go through the testing phase and then that's the only time they can do it.
Well, here's the actual line in the law. And it's when a vehicle is operated by an autonomous vehicle test driver who is an employee, contractor, or designee of the manufacturer. So if you don't meet one of those definitions, then you wouldn't meet the requirement for having a testing permit.
Right, right. And there's actually also, they must issue a course that you must pass as the exam, correct?
Correct. There has to be training of the test driver. Yes.
So in theory, just putting a kind of crazy idea out there, if Tesla created a course that you had to go do, you do that course, Tesla's not necessarily paying you, but you are now a designee. Could people use it? I guess they don't really need to do it during the testing period. I'm just curious.
If you were a designee of the manufacturer, then the answer would be yes. So if Tesla came up with something they offered, you could go to your local service center and spend a Saturday afternoon doing this course and then get designated by Tesla, then yes, you could test under this permit law.
Right. So, and do you know if the course has to be in person or is it allowed to be virtual? Because from my understanding, it's more about understanding how to enter information in the system, how to label things properly, and not have this qualitative difference in what is a safety takeover versus not a safety takeover. Or do you think it's also a driving requirement?
I think it could be virtual. Absolutely. As long as you, from what I'm reading, understand the system, know how to operate it, and know the proper recording requirements, then yes, you would qualify. I don't see anything that requires you to have actual seat time.
Thank you. I very much appreciate your time. Those were all the questions I had.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate it.
Any other questions, comments? Please request if the space has been going on for about 2.5 hours. coming up to 3. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak. Omar, did you get a chance to review the website that Tesla put up about Elon comp? Any takes on it?
I haven't reviewed the website fully, but I just think this was a major to-do item that needed to be done. So it's really good to see that they have a plan for how to rectify the situation with this decision. They've put it in front of us to vote on. There's something that we can try and do to fix this. And, whether it's real or perceived, there seems to be a recognition among investors, whether they're bullish or bearish, that this is actually a really important thing to get right. So I'm hopeful that within a few months in June, we can vote, that the vote will be successful, and that we can start to put this behind us.
David,
But to be honest,
Garrett,
I'm a little nervous about it passing, right? You look at this website, you look at even people like Ross Gerber saying, oh, they should fire the board and elect me, right? There's a lot of people who are frustrated. This would be an easier thing to get passed if the share price was at 300 than if it was at 150. And if it doesn't get passed, then it could be bad for the future of Tesla. So it's going to be really interesting to see the discourse around this and how this all shakes out. And, it's a very dramatic vote. I think one of the most dramatic votes I can remember. And it couldn't be coming at a worse time for Elon, where the company had a quarter where they had deliveries declining year over year. People are upset with him for politics, for insulting NPR, for you name it. And now he's asking them to reaffirm this compensation package that many of us believe that he deserves. But let's see what it really comes down to. I'm not sure we can really be 100% confident that this is in the bag. I would hope so, but we'll have to see what the actual tally is.
It should also be noted that the Q1 earnings call will be the last long form kind of dedicated time that Elon will have to speak to Tesla shareholders about Tesla financials, Tesla future plans.
That's a good point.
Before the vote in June. So it should be, he has the incentives. And by the way, just now, an hour or so ago, the say questions opened up, and people can go vote on those now.
Yeah, I expect to see some very sharp say questions, right? When the company isn't doing well or people aren't perceiving it to do well, the investor questions are usually pretty brutal. And it's going to be interesting to see what people put in the say.com for this call.
I just wanted to voice my protest that Elon is laying off people at Rivian today, and it's incredibly thoughtless.
I blame
Yeah, they're doing
Yaman.
their second.
He did not go hard enough the other day when he told people to buy Rivians, and this is why the layoffs are happening.
Oh my God. Well, they are convinced, the Rivian investors are convinced that they're going to get tax credits in 2030.
Well, the good thing is they're paying their CEO.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how Rivian is basically doing everything that all these disgruntled Tesla investors think Tesla should be doing.
Yeah, actually, it's a very good point. Just sell your Tesla stock and go buy Rivian if you really want to do that.
More models. The more models, the better.
Here's the crazy thing. Top paid CEO in the auto industry last year, Peter Rawlinson. Worst delivery and sales performance in the industry. Best CEO in the industry, Elon Musk gets paid 0. How crazy is that?
I guess fate loves irony is true.
Yeah, I agree with Omar that this is going to be the most dramatic vote, I mean, I can't imagine actually like any other vote that's like even outside of Tesla. What other shareholder vote is more dramatic than this? Right?
Yeah, I don't think Steve
You
Jobs'
guys,
removal was a vote, so feels like a Elon removal vote.
absolutely.
It is. It's a referendum on Elon. It really is. If
I can't
he,
question. You're sorry, go ahead.
yeah, if it gets approved, then he's going to be energized to focus on Tesla, and it's going to be very good for the company. If shareholders refuse to give him what they agreed to give him in 2018, then it could potentially lead to him leaving the company or caring less about it. So it really is a referendum on Elon and whether he stays ultimately.
Yeah. And question for you, quick question. Do Elon and Kimball, do they have to not join the vote? But do they have to exclude themselves, or can they actually vote their shares if
Abstain,
they
yeah.
wanted to? Abstain, yeah.
I don't think there's any technical requirement that they have to abstain, but I think it's good form that they do.
Yeah, this is
Yeah, you
really
wouldn't want a
interesting.
situation where most shareholders did not approve of paying him, but because he owned so many shares, he tipped the vote, and that was the only reason he won. You really want it to be the non-interested shareholders really approving of the plan. That's what really gives you the moral high ground, I think.
Do they have to
Yeah, it's
legally disclose the percentage of the vote, or do they just have to say pass or fail?
They have to disclose the total of votes, yeah.
Did Elon recuse last time in 2018
yes, he did.
Yep.
from both the board vote and the stockholder vote?
As far as I know, both Kimball from the two.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
do believe that when he by the judge, she mentioned it.
Honestly, like, you know, after this vote, especially if it passes with overwhelming majority, whoever is skeptical of these proposals is going to have no ground to say anything. With all these disclosures and revisiting, and you know, and Elon and Kimball abstaining, if it still passes with overwhelming majority, then end of story.
Yeah, I'd just like to go back and add one other thing. As I said before, if this vote passes, it has no effect on the 218 litigation. So you couldn't go back to the appeals court and argue, well, the shareholders approved it again, therefore this whole issue is moot. It doesn't
I
work
don't
that
think
way.
like that. Honestly, that's not really the that's not, it's immaterial. The material issue here is, will Elon stay at at Tesla, and how to motivate him? That's the material issue. Whether lawyers get paid this and that is irrelevant.
Yeah, I think it's also for Elon to be able to see that people do love him and respect him and not have to deal with this again.
Peter Timball.
Yeah, so last time we got about 80% vote for the compensation package. Do you guys think that with all the institutional investors and Ross's and Gary Black's, there's a potential that that plan would not pass this time around?
I think some of those Gary Blacks and Rosses don't have many shares.
What about all their big institutional investors?
Exactly.
Institutional
So
investors hate it.
well,
Why would they have a
so
lot of shares if they didn't already agree with Elon?
okay, let's not jump to conclusion. So that's my question to Peter. You asked me my question in my head, which is, first of all, Gary Blacksmith, Ross Berger's, lots of noise, not many shares. It's not going to make a difference. It's the institutional investors that are the majority holders, right? Especially if Elon and Kimball are abstaining. Now, in the proxy, I think Tesla says something like 4 out of top 10, especially T. Rowe Price, showed sports, wrote letters to the chairman, chairwoman, etc. So, but one thing to note is I think the composition of institutional shareholders has changed in the last few years. And what incentive do they have to vote? Anyway, that's what's going through my head too. So Peter asked my question. Omar?
So I just commented with a breakdown of Tesla ownership. 13.66% insiders, 13.76% mutual funds, 17% other institutional investors, and 55.59% public companies and individual investors. So if everybody voted against it, but all of retail agreed, we could single-handedly grant him the compensation plan. But I think you can actually convince a lot of the mutual funds and institutions that it is in their best interest to approve the plan. I think they understand, look, we gave them the plan before, we kind of got to keep the word. And I'm sure IR will talk to them and, kind of schmooze them. One interesting point is that it is the shareholders of
Wait,
record as of
hold on. Sorry to interrupt. What am I looking at here? What's this 55% public companies? What do they mean by public companies?
well, I think they're just sort of grouping those in together. Public
what's going to
companies and
be?
individual
Those
investors.
are probably. I'm guessing that probably includes BlackRock. I don't know. That really? Can you show? Can
It
you
could.
link? Yeah.
Yeah,
Can you link?
I commented with the link underneath.
Okay. I'm gonna check that out while we talk.
Yeah, check it out. Maybe check some other sources. I just did a quick Google, so I don't know if this source is really accurate or not. But the other point I was going to make is that 4/15/2024 is the date of record for shareholders. So you can't buy shares today to increase your vote. It's whoever owns shares on 4/15. So luckily, Ross and Gary sold most of their shares, so they don't get to vote. Thankfully, which is why I said it was bullish when Ross sold his shares. I said, "Oh, thank God, we don't want these guys holding shares." Um, and the institutional investors, I think the bigger ones, they kind of have different thoughts about things. So we'll see what they really say. But I think it's really going to come down to obviously institutional investors, mutual funds, and of course, retail shareholders. And the retail shareholders, many of the people who are listening to this space, are probably going to have the most diverse opinions. You've got a guy who, in many cases, minted millionaires, changed lives of people who invested in Tesla. And there will be people who remember that, but there will also be people who are frustrated with him, who think that he shouldn't have bought Twitter and this compensation package allowed him to do that. And there could be some blowback from that as well. So the retail component, I think, is probably going to be where people are the most divided, and it'll be interesting to see which side it comes up on.
Yeah, I actually disagree with you on that. I think retail will overwhelmingly vote for Elon. Okay. I think it's going to be I think some of this public company stuff, it's in there. I think that I'm guessing it has BlackRock, Invesco, like some of these investment managers, institutional investment managers are publicly traded. I wonder if that's why they kind of put it in there. It's kind of an odd way of classifying it. But the majority of holders are institutional investors. And, some of these, like I'm curious what these institutional shareholder proxy firms are going to say about this vote. We're probably going to hear about that in the coming days. Meta?
If I heard you correctly earlier, sorry, I was going to cough. If I heard you correctly earlier, you said that 4 out of the 5 top institutional investors vote
Or out of
voiced their
10.
support. 4 out of 10. Okay.
Yeah, I'll
Very good.
I'll link this up here. That's what Tesla included in the proxy that Sawyer copy pasted in the image. So I'll pin this up here.
Appreciate it. Because
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, because if it's 4 out of 10, we can do a best case, worst case scenario, right? Of the top 10 institutional holders as of 4/15, I'm guessing, if that data is available. When you said 4 out of 5, I looked at the bottom 4 out of the 5, and that represent about 11 or 12% of the vote. So some significant portion of the vote is already known.
Yeah, I mean, like the other thing is like, like somebody said earlier, I forget who said, but if you don't agree with Elon, like why are you even holding Tesla shares? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was me.
Especially, okay, there you go. Especially like after the last 2 years. So,
maybe they waited
so
till Gary sold, and they're like, "Now's a good sign. If Gary sold, then that means all those people are out."
Right. Right. Where is this exact quote here?
I'm curious how Machine feels that he doesn't get a vote.
I told you I do have some shares. I did vote. I have 3 questions. One of them, the most important one, maybe I made it too wordy, has not been accepted so far.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about say. I was referring to the shareholder vote.
Oh, never mind. I you can vote for that too. Yeah. Liar.
I was under the impression you had sold everything because you said you weren't in it. So I was going by your words.
I mean, I have a small amount of shares residual that I would keep for these purposes as well as sentimental value, I suppose.
We can't all be as rich as Machine. He just has some shares for sentimental value.
Are you keeping shares so you can sue Tesla, Machine?
Well, apparently I do have enough to do that, I guess, based on that last lawsuit. And don't ask the question with your mouth full of food, Bradford. That's just not acceptable in the space unless it's a Popeye's chicken sandwich.
Free thinker.
I just had a quick thing to say. You guys were questioning about that chart that was up there with publicly traded companies. BlackRock is not a publicly traded company. That is an institutional investor. So they will be.
BlackRock is a publicly traded company.
No, it's not.
Do you want to bet?
It is. I just looked at it.
But this guy replied and said, "You morons, BlackRock is not a publicly traded company." I love it when that happens.
They just had their earnings report earlier this week, I believe.
Some people just think they're smarter than they are. Anyway, Henry.
Tencent is 5% of Tesla. Chinese company, Tencent.
Perfect. There you go. That explains too. All right. I mean, that pie chart is just
They're going to vote for it. They're going to vote for it 100%. And I do have food in my mouth, Machine.
You sound like a Danish person. That's what their accent actually sounds like. Go like this.
Yeah. Ken. Eric.
I didn't have my hand up.
I don't see how it could even be a question whether it passes if I'm a shareholder, which I am. Even if I hate Elon, I know what happens if the vote doesn't pass. The share price goes down. So even I'm incentivized financially to actually vote for it, right?
I think that depends on your view, right? If you're voting against it, theoretically, they think they know better.
Yeah, I mean, some people, yeah, exactly. they think that they can assign a different CEO that goes a better job, I guess. Anyway. All right. Meta,
Oh, I was saying goodbye.
goodbye. All right,
Adios.
this space has been going on for 3 hours. Any other questions, comments, please request to speak. Otherwise, we'll end the space. Machine.
I was just thinking that I think, the reason most people love Tesla is that they realize it's a soap opera. It's like watching The Bold and the Beautiful over and over again every day, wondering who's going to cheat on who, whose baby is it. You don't know what's going to happen. You got good-looking people, ugly people. In this case, I'm
Are you the bold or the beautiful?
That's right, both.
Who just came up? David, go ahead. David Garfield, you have to unmute yourself for us to hear you. Sid, go ahead.
Hi, guys. Yeah,
David.
thanks for taking my question. About 2 years ago, Tesla was saying regarding the megapacks, but they had unlimited demand for megapacks. Yeah, I know they've just started building a factory in Shanghai, but why the 2 year delay? It's not a question of money. They got 20, 30 billion dollars in the bank, or they had 20 billion dollars in the bank back then. Why has it took so long to get mega factories going? And why only one mega factory additional mega factory in Shanghai? Why aren't we building these on every continent? We can actually see the benefit of them. They have enormous profit in them. It just seems a road to a lot of financial progress, but we just have stalled on that. It's almost like they're reneging on what they said before. I think the last statement, they had 24% profit margin in these packs. So any ideas, guys, what the delay was or is? Thanks.
Omar, that machine.
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest, why the Shanghai Mega Factory hasn't been built already. So I don't have an answer for you on that. I'm sure there's a lot of complications with securing the cell supply and things like that potentially. But it does look like it is under construction. So I think it should definitely potentially more than double the output once it's up and running.
Machine, that has a.
I don't think we know for sure. We know the Lathrop itself has not scaled to its full capacity, so that might be related. Whether or not there's a certain part supply, if it's the cells, which I don't think so, but maybe, or the inverter or some other pieces of equipment. I know Elon's mentioned things with transformers being a limiting factor soon. I don't know, but I do believe the Shanghai factory, maybe they wait and have a cadence where they wait for one factory to ramp fully before opening the next in terms of cash flows. And my last comment, just separate, is so I did have two say questions approved. I will say one is on the 4680 dry electrode process status, and one is on asking when, not if, when will Optimus exceed FSD Robotaxi in revenue?
You did not ask that question. Did you really ask that question?
I did, and it is currently being upvoted at an exponential rate.
That's so funny. You do realize that our bets are on the first billion profit, right? Not revenue.
I know, but I'm wording it differently for Elon to make it simpler for him.
That's so funny.
This is my
That is
first
really
step
funny.
toward if my two questions get asked, then I think I should be nominated for the board because it already shows my ability to communicate effectively.
And focus on the things that shareholders care about. Machine. if that prediction of yours that Optimus will generate the first billion in profits quicker than robotaxis indeed turns out to be true, it's going to be one of the most epic calls in Tesla history, I think. So
I'm still feeling good about it. Actually, I mean, I know it's an out there call. I still believe everything's going well. The optimism that people have for FSD translates to Optimus when they actually focus on it. And I do believe that the limiting factors I said for FSD is something that won't be as much of a bottleneck for Optimus. So that's still in play, I believe.
yeah. And if it turns out to be true, I think it's going to be the biggest smackdown on your haters. Tesla for
I think the answer to the question in regards to the Megapack factory is that demand is not unlimited. Would be I think it's a fairly safe assumption.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that too. Machine.
I agree that demand is not unlimited, but I don't agree that that's the reason it's been held back. They've been already over a year out waiting for current production. And sure, if they scale up, they're going to have to drop prices. But where they're at right now, that seems like a no-brainer still to scale up production, even if they have to drop prices. So I don't think that's the reason yet.
Yeah, one factor could just be that there's essentially an oversupply of batteries in China that's led to deflation and prices plummeting. So it could be that there's just competition among other makers of batteries like CATL and BYD and others that are impacting their ability to get orders. They have been sort of cutting prices slightly, I think like a $10,000 price cut or something like that. So it could be that competition is a factor too. I'm not sure what percentage of the global utility scale storage market Tesla is actually taking today in terms of a percentage of the total capacity shift.
Michael.
I think it's about 20% last I looked of the global utility scale storage, 15 to 20% last time I looked. But yes, there's a cell oversupply in China. And also, I'm not sure the unlimited demand in the short term actually applies because they grew energy deployments about 4% year over year.
Thank you, Michael. Machine, somebody said in the replies, Simon said in the replies, only the bold fault has a major leak. Machine is only beautiful.
Well, listen, I held Tesla and went all in when most of you were teenagers crying in your mom's lap, when the company couldn't even get their Model 3s on a ship to Europe in time. And that was a real downtime. And the share price had plummeted to $176. I remember because that was the last of my money came in from a transition from an old IRA. I got in. I was like, should I even throw this last $5,000 in to Tesla? The last little bit. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And that $5,000 at $176 share price, pre-split, that went up over 20x. I don't even know what did it go up to. 30x.
Are you done? Are you done patting yourself on the back?
I am.
Okay. Sid?
Yeah, so this question is about the voting thing for Elon's compensation. Does the number of shares we hold have a weightage on the vote?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. And are we going to get an email from Tesla for when the voting begins? And if that's already out, I didn't see an email yet.
Email from your brokerage. So
From
for
the brokerage?
example,
Okay.
if you use Charles Schwab will send you an email.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
David, you have to unmute yourself for us to hear. All right. Thank you, Sid. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Eva's in the house. We haven't heard from her in a while. She wants to come up and share her FSD experience. David, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of you guys said they don't think there's a demand there anymore. Tesla is saying there's a 2-year backlog on these megapacks. These megapack factories are only as big as a...
David, people said that they do not agree with the statement that it's because of a demand issue for megapacks. It's something else.
Okay, I thought one of them said the opposite. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I mean, it's not, I mean, my understanding is that there's an interconnect backlog. So even if you produce these things and send them to the site and install them, you know, you still have to need regulatory approval to add them to the grid. And there seems to be a multi-year backlog. Is my understanding. I might be wrong. This is not my area of expertise, but so
is any of your area of expertise?
It's managing you. All right. Thank you, David. All right. Sounds like we've come to a nice resting stop. Maybe we can continue tomorrow. Thank you very much, everybody. Tomorrow's space may start at a different time, but I will let you know in a post.
By the way, a rest stop, that's the first place that I met your mom.
Well, on that note, thank you, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. Thank